Chapter 1261. What's wrong? Feng Ling walked out of the lounge and looked up at him. Li Nanheng lowered his eyes to look at her, raised his hand, and gently rubbed her soft hair. He seemed to be very tired. This kind of exhaustion was not physical, but psychological. Touching her hair and seeing the hope in her eyes, he said in a low voice, "They are not in good condition. You have to be mentally prepared." Feng Ling knew that they had inhaled too much smoke and had been in the jungle with a huge fire for so long. When she carried Mrs. Feng on her back, she could not feel her breath. She was indeed mentally prepared, but she habitually trusted Li Nanheng. He told her not to worry and to leave everything to him. But Li Nanheng was not an immortal. He could not bring a dying person back to life. That tiny bit of hope was shattered in the end. Feng Ling did not speak, but just pursed her lips and looked at him. Li Nanheng couldn't stand her silent and forbearing gaze. He glanced at the two old people who were still in the lounge, and an imperceptible heartache flashed across his eyes. He dragged her away and pressed her against the wall in a corridor that the two old people couldn't see. They're still in emergency treatment, but the doctors are basically dealing with the aftermath. I know you can't bear it, but I can't hide it from you. Feng Ling was speechless. Indeed, she thought she was strong enough. But when this kind of thing really happened, she found that she really couldn't take it. Leaning against the wall, she felt speechless. In her mind, Mrs. Feng Qinqiu looked at her excitedly and patiently in the shopping mall. She looked at her eagerly in the coffee shop. She smiled gently from time to time, because of her and Li Nanheng's ambiguous love in the coffee shop. She had a mother and a father. They personally went to the jungle to pick her up and take her home. She thought that she had never come into contact with family since she was young, and thought that she was indifferent to it. But she did not expect that such a strong blow would make her entire body numb. Feng Ling leaned against the wall and did not speak. Li Nanheng stood in front of her, holding her shoulder, giving her time to be silent, giving her time to digest and face, and accompanying her in silence. In the end, Feng Ling reached out to hug his neck and buried her face in his neck. She did not speak, but he felt the warm tears on his neck. He caressed her head. My parents passed away when I was very young. I was too young at that time, and I didn't even have the emotions to cry or be sad. After living with a few elders, I've become numb to family love, but I can't deny its existence. When I'm sad, I cry. It takes time to heal. I've always been here. I have shoulders and chests. They're all yours. Feng Ling hugged him and nodded silently. Her tears still soaked his neck. He gently stroked the back of her head and held her firmly in his arms. Little Qiu. How could this be? How could this be? Just as Feng Ling was comforted by Li Nanheng, and the two of them were walking back, they suddenly heard a trembling scream. The voice belonged to old Madame Feng. Feng Ling's expression stiffened, and she quickly walked over, only to see that old Madame Feng had already walked out. Not far away, the door of the emergency room was open. Qinqiu's entire body and face were covered by a white cloth. The doctor had just informed the people of 11 Base, and then pushed her out. She didn't expect there to be two old people here. As soon as she was pushed out, she was stopped and couldn't be pushed to the morgue. She could only stand there and watch the old people crying and pouncing on her. She had just learned that there was no hope. Now that she saw the person who was once smiling at her lying under a cold white cloth, Feng Ling's face instantly turned pale. She quickly walked over, and when old Madame Feng lifted the white cloth and threw herself on the bed to hug Qinqiu, she walked forward and hugged old Madame Feng. She couldn't say anything. When she opened her mouth, she would definitely be choked with sobs. She tried her best to hold back all the tears that wanted to gush out, but she looked at the pale and motionless Qinqiu with her own eyes. She saw that the tears had already dried up. They were probably shed in the emergency room, but in the end, she couldn't be saved. Even if no one was willing to believe that all of this was true, the whole family had been discussing how to bring her back last night. The whole family had been very happy and excited, but why did they suddenly separate forever? It would only take a few hours. It was just a big fire. His body was not burnt at all. Everything was clean and tidy, but she was gone. The old lady threw herself on Qinqiu's cold body and cried. She kept shouting, Xiao Qiu, don't go. Feng Ling just came back. You two haven't acknowledged each other yet, Xiao Qiu. These words all hit Feng Ling's heart. Feng Ling had just cried. Right now she was holding back her tears. She hugged the old lady tightly with both hands, afraid that she would fall down. Grandfather Feng stood by the side and closed his eyes. His painful gaze shifted from Qin Xiu's pale face and finally landed on the medical staff at the end of the bed. Even though he knew that there was little hope, he still asked hoarsely, "What about the other one?" "My son." "Sir, the man inside is the same," the leading doctor said apologetically. He and his wife also inhaled a lot of smoke. No matter how advanced modern medicine is, it's really impossible to save this situation. However, the man's physical fitness is slightly stronger than his wife's. He barely regained some consciousness before, and now he's still breathing. Maybe he can see him for the last time. The doctor tried his best to be tactful. However, it was clear that he was saying that this was the last time he would see him before he completely died. There was no way to save him. When Grandfather Feng heard that his son could not be saved, he almost staggered. The members of 11 Base behind him quickly stepped forward to support him. "Elder Feng, my condolences." At this moment, the doctor suddenly looked at Li Nanheng, who had just walked behind Feng Ling, and the old lady. "Mr. Li, the man inside is still dying, but we heard what he said during the emergency treatment. He said he wanted to see you." "See him?" He was about to die, and his daughter and family were outside. However, when Mr. Feng knew that he only had one breath left, he said he wanted to see Li Nanheng. Li Nanheng glanced at the doctor indifferently. The doctor nodded at him, indicating that what he said was true. At this time, the old lady had already fainted from crying. Feng Ling quickly helped her up, and Grandfather Feng could only rely on others to support him. The scene was chaotic. The doctor was already used to this situation, and only told the patient's last words truthfully. W. 4M. Chapter 1262. Li Nanheng gave the members of 11 Base a look. They immediately understood what their boss meant and nodded. "We'll make arrangements for the two elders of the Feng family." Li Nanheng did not speak further. At the same time, his gaze landed on Feng Ling. She was hugging Madame Feng. Under the doctor's lead, he walked into the emergency room. After changing into a sterilized isolation suit, he walked in and walked to the bed inside. Mr. Feng was lying there with his eyes closed, motionless. Li Nanheng looked at the various medical equipment by the side. He heard the sounds of the heart and lungs breathing, and all the machines that represented the human body's vitality. He saw Mr. Feng's weak breathing, and the frequency of his heart that was about to stop beating. He walked to the bedside. "Sir, Mr. Li is here. Can you still hear me?" The doctor walked over and removed the blood pressure measurement from Mr. Feng's fingertips. This thing was no longer of any use to him, but when it was removed, the other party would more or less feel it. After a long minute, Mr. Feng's eyelids moved slightly. His fingers also moved slightly. He could not open his eyes, but he moved his lips with great difficulty. Li Nanheng looked at him. A moment later, he leaned down and pressed his lips against his lips. He heard him say two words in a barely audible voice. He spoke with great difficulty and could hardly be heard clearly, but the emergency room was very quiet. Li Nanheng listened quietly. After a while, he finally finished listening to Mr. Feng's words, and his eyes were as deep as the sea. Then, a long beep came from the medical equipment by the side. When Mr. Feng was pushed out with a white cloth, the two elders of the Feng family had already been helped back to the break room by the people of 11 Base. Only Feng Ling stood outside the emergency room and watched him walk out. Feng Ling stood there quietly. When she watched Mr. Feng being pushed out with a white cloth, her gaze lingered on the person on the bed for a long time until Li Nanheng asked her, "Do you want to see your biological father?" Feng Ling raised her hand. She wanted to lift the white cloth, but in the end, she only hung in the air and gently clenched her fist. "No, he's already gone. Let him rest in peace." Hearing her words, the doctor continued to push her towards the elevator to send her to the morgue. When all the medical staff had left, the corridor outside the emergency room was so quiet that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Li Nanheng still stood there watching her. Feng Ling did not leave either. She just looked back at the man. "What did he say to you?" Li Nanheng did not answer. He walked up to her, lowered his eyes to look at her for a moment, and then raised his hand to pull her into his arms. Feng Ling knew that her father must have said something to Li Nanheng, but Li Nanheng did not say anything. He only hugged her and kissed her forehead. "What do you want to do now?" "I want to kill someone," Feng Ling answered straightforwardly. "The first time I had the urge to kill was when I faced that fat commander at the military base. Then I really killed him. This is the second time. I really want to kill someone." Li Nanheng's hand landed on the back of her head comfortingly and gently stroked it. "I understand." She hadn't returned home yet, and she hadn't recognized her relatives yet. Suddenly, she was separated from her parents for 20 years. They only wanted to go to the jungle to pick up their child. Everything should have developed in a good direction. But why did such a fire suddenly happen? Feng Ling closed her eyes. She clenched her fingers so hard that there was a sound of bones crisscrossing. "From now on, no matter what I do, don't stop me." Li Nanheng's hand paused on the back of her head, and Feng Ling continued, "I won't do anything illegal." A moment later, the man responded in a low voice. "N." It was said that the forest fire burned for 2 days, and one night before the fire was slightly smaller. Only then could the fire trucks successfully approach and gradually put out the remaining fire. The entire jungle had almost been burned to the ground. When they approached, the ground was covered in charcoal and black tree trunks. When the wind blew, the air was filled with the smell of burning. This fire affected the tourism environment near Malibu Beach. The United States Tourism Administration was very angry and reported it to the higher-ups. In less than 48 hours, it had already alarmed the higher-ups. They sent people from all over to investigate the cause of the fire in the jungle and ask questions everywhere. However, that jungle was not a place that anyone could easily approach. There were no surveillance cameras around, so there was no way to investigate. They only knew that the Feng family had appeared there in the end, but Mr. Feng and Mrs. Feng had already died because of this forest fire. The old man and old lady of the Feng family were sent to the hospital's recuperation center to be comforted and cared for by a psychiatrist. Right now, it was not suitable for the police to collect evidence and interview them. Who else was there in the Feng family? Feng Mingzhu. However, from the beginning of the incident until now, Feng Mingzhu had never appeared. Originally, even if someone had considered if it had something to do with Feng Mingzhu, Feng Ling believed that no matter how crazy Feng Mingzhu was, she wouldn't do something like burning her biological parents to death. She was just too extreme and muddle-headed. It was impossible for her to do such a heinous thing. However, for 3 days Feng Mingzhu did not appear. When they received news from the customs that Feng Mingzhu was in a hurry to leave the United States with someone else's passport and identity card, she was caught by the customs and was currently detained at the airport. After learning that Feng Mingzhu was actually secretly escaping to leave the United States, Feng Ling felt as though she had fallen into an ice cave. Airport Customs Center. Feng Mingzhu sat on a chair inside. She had no time to look at the luggage by her hand. From time to time, she raised her pale face and panicked eyes to look at the customs staff coming and going. When the people on duty here turned to help carry the luggage, she suddenly stood up and walked in the direction of the bathroom. The customs staff only noticed that her behavior was a little strange, but they did not find out that she had done anything illegal. However, they still investigated her matter out of suspicion and learned that she might be related to the recent incident of the Feng family in the Chinese community of Los Angeles. Thus, they kept an eye on her and called the relevant departments. Afterward, they somehow contacted the people from 11 Base. The higher-ups wanted them to detain this Feng Mingzhu and not let her leave the country. Thus, they were only responsible for watching her. The fake passport and identity card had been left behind, and the real passport had been disqualified from the passport database. Feng Mingzhu had already lost the chance to leave the United States smoothly. The people here were only responsible for checking the luggage. Although there were many people, no security guards were sent over. Feng Mingzhu wanted to take this opportunity to find the right time to escape. W. 4M. Chapter 1263. A figure hurriedly went to the washroom of the Customs Inspection Center and took off his coat. Then, he hurriedly took out a pair of sunglasses from his coat and put them on. He tied his hair up high into a ponytail. His whole appearance and temperament seemed to have changed a little. She wanted to sneak out while the staff of the Customs Center were not paying attention. Feng Mingzhu saw that 2 people who worked as agents were detained by the customs. Many customs officers went up to forcefully open their suitcases to check their items. When their attention was on the 2 illegal agents, they didn't care about their suitcases anymore and quickly jumped out of the door by the side. 2 or 3 minutes later, the customs staff suddenly found that Feng Mingzhu had disappeared. They went to the washroom and saw the coat thrown there. They hurriedly came out and sounded the alarm. In the large Los Angeles airport, Feng Mingzhu was hiding everywhere. Suddenly, the entire airport's alarm rang, scaring her to the point where she had nowhere to run. She hid in a deserted corner, trembling all over, and her eyes lost focus as she stared into the distance. Her arms wrapped around her shoulders, she squatted there, buried her face between her legs, and cried silently in fear. The alarm didn't stop. From time to time, the sound of an English broadcast came from the airport, and the entire airport was filled with Feng Mingzhu's name. Feng Mingzhu felt that she couldn't hide here. Sooner or later, she would be discovered by the patrols or security guards here. Taking advantage of the fact that there was no one around, she came out of the corner and wandered around the washrooms. In the end, she wanted to find an opportunity to walk to the exit or the parking lot to leave. However, while Feng Mingzhu was walking quickly to find a way out, she didn't know that all the entrances and exits of the Los Angeles airport, which covered an area of 2.6 million square meters, had been quickly guarded by members of the 11 base. She didn't know that all the visible surveillance areas on every floor of the airport had been thoroughly checked. 15 minutes later, Feng Mingzhu managed to blend into the group of people who had just landed outside the airport hall. From time to time, she pushed up the sunglasses on her face and walked out of the crowd. Just as she was about to walk out of the airport hall, suddenly, a group of people wearing the black uniforms of the 11 base appeared in front of her and surrounded her. As soon as Feng Mingzhu saw their clothes and the cold and solemn expressions on their faces, she trembled and froze in place. In the next moment, she saw the members of the 11 base take the initiative to give way. When she saw the people approaching in front of her step by step, she felt as though the whole world was about to collapse. Feng Mingzhu's expression was ashen. She watched as Feng Ling approached her step by step. Feng Ling's gaze was cold, and there was undisguised coldness and killing intent in her eyes. She stopped 4 or 5 meters away from Feng Mingzhu and looked at her coldly. You! Feng Mingzhu had thought of many possibilities. She thought it was the police or someone else, but she never expected that the person who came to arrest her would be Feng Ling. What about me? Feng Ling looked at her expressionlessly. Her eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of ice. If you didn't escape, I wouldn't have thought that this whole matter would really have something to do with you. The police haven't even found any surveillance cameras near the area. But you've been hiding for so many days. You even want to use a fake identity to leave the United States. Not to mention that it's impossible for you to leave, even if you really leave. As long as 11 Base wants to track you down, where do you think you can escape to? Even if you hide in the South Pole, there's still nowhere to run. Feng Mingzhu's expression was deathly pale. What are you talking about? I just accidentally took the wrong passport. When did I say that I wanted to use a fake identity to leave the country? However, Feng Ling did not wait for her to finish speaking. She only sneered and casually took out the real passport that belonged to Feng Mingzhu from her pocket. When Feng Mingzhu looked at the thing in her hand in disbelief and was speechless, she suddenly threw the passport heavily on her face. Feng Mingzhu was in pain, but she looked at the people from 11 Base around her, and then at the gun on Feng Ling's waist. Her lips trembled, and she could not say a word for a long time. They were clearly sisters, but at this moment, They were actually meeting each other with such identities. Feng Ling looked at her coldly for a long time. It was so long that Feng Mingzhu was about to be frozen under her gaze. Feng Ling asked coldly, "Why did you do this?" Feng Mingzhu closed her eyes. From the moment she learned that her parents had entered the jungle, and that they had died in the fire, she knew that she was finished. Originally, she wanted to hide, but now she knew that she had no hope at all. Whether it was Feng Ling, the Feng family, or the police, they would not let her off. It was impossible for her grandparents to protect her. She didn't know why she suddenly walked into a desperate situation. She just wanted to stop Feng Ling from coming back. Feng Mingzhu closed her eyes. It was unknown whether she was crying or smiling. After a long time of tolerance, she suddenly knelt on the ground and cried loudly. She cried until her neck was red and her entire face was red. She cried until she was out of breath and shouted, "I didn't want to kill them. I didn't expect them to go in. Those are my parents. They are my parents. I only want to burn you to death, not them." Feng Ling's hands that were quietly hanging by her legs suddenly clenched into fists. I didn't want to. Feng Mingzhu had completely broken down. "I haven't eaten or slept for days. I just don't want you to go back to the Feng family. Why do you want to live? I just want you to die there. The person I want to burn to death is you. But why are they the ones who die? Why?" She raised her hand and held her head hard, screaming and crying. "I don't want to do this either. Why did they go in? I don't want to kill them at all. But what can I do? What can I do? Aha! What can I do? By the time I know, it's already too late." Feng Ling endured and walked forward, kicking Feng Mingzhu's chest hard. She then walked forward and pulled Feng Mingzhu up, who had been kicked to the ground. She grabbed her collar tightly with both hands, and looked at her fiercely and coldly. "Feng Mingzhu, you're really stupid. How can I have the same blood as you?" Feng Mingzhu's entire body was in a sorry state. She looked at her with a miserable expression. Feng Ling's kick was very painful, and there seemed to be the taste of blood in her throat. She tried hard to swallow it, but a cold gun was suddenly pressed against her forehead. Feng Mingzhu shivered all over, and looked at her with trembling eyes filled with fear. "We're clearly sisters, but there's such a big gap between us. Do you think you're the daughter of a famous family? You've been living a luxurious life since you were young, and I'm an orphan who can't be on your so-called stage?" Feng Ling's voice was cold, and she said word by word coldly, "But do you know where the real gap between us is? That is, if you want to kill me, it's still as difficult as ascending to heaven as you plan carefully and advance step by step. And if I want you to die, I can make your blood splatter on the spot right now." Asking for monthly Votsu. 4M. Chapter 1264. Feng Ling had already pulled the trigger. As long as she hooked her finger, she could immediately send Feng Mingzhu to meet her parents. Feng Mingzhu's eyes were full of fear. She knew she was doomed, but facing a woman who seemed to be possessed by the king of hell, she really felt a gun pressed against her head. Her head could be blown off at any time, and the fear of death surrounded her. She trembled violently, and looked at Feng Ling in disbelief. Are you going to kill people in a place like the airport? Feng Ling, how can you be so bold? If you dare to set fire to the jungle, you should have investigated my childhood. I grew up drinking wolf's milk. How can I be humane? The only reason I've kept you alive until today is because I've never cared about you." Feng Ling's tone was very indifferent, but the gun in her hand was very cold. It was as cold as her voice. "You set fire to the forest and killed your parents. The Feng family can no longer be your backer. The police in 11 base won't let you off, especially me. Even if I shoot you here, it's just a matter of writing another complaint. It won't cause any trouble. Do you think I don't dare?" After being in contact with Feng Ling for so long, Feng Mingzhu only knew that she seemed to be a very powerful character in 11 base. But Feng Ling had always been very gentle and aloof. She was always indifferent, and didn't even have the desire to quarrel with others. This was the first time Feng Mingzhu felt Feng Ling's killing intent. It was a terrible killing intent. "You can't kill me." Feng Mingzhu tried to suppress the fear in her eyes and glared at her. "I'm your sister. You can't do anything to me. The Feng family is in deep trouble now. If you dare to do anything to me, Have you thought about Grandpa and Grandma? Will they be able to take this blow? You, ah. Before she could finish speaking, she was abruptly slapped to the ground by Feng Ling. The slap was so hard that the corner of Feng Mingzhu's mouth cracked in pain. There was a faint trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. She lay on the ground and only recovered from the dizziness after a long while. She turned her eyes in disbelief and looked at the gun in Feng Ling's hand. The muzzle was still aimed at her, but Feng Ling had already taken a step back and looked down at her expressionlessly. Looking at the black muzzle, Feng Mingzhu shuddered. I do want to kill you, but my parents, who were killed by you, have just found peace in the underworld. They don't seem to want to see you so soon. Feng Ling's voice was cold and indifferent. If I want to take revenge, I have countless ways to make you wish you were dead. Feng Mingzhu, don't stimulate the bloodthirsty and dark side hidden in my bones. Otherwise, I will bite off your flesh bit by bit, cut you into thousands of pieces, and throw you into the deep mountains and wild forests. I will even do things like that. You. Feng Mingzhu didn't expect that she could say such bloody and terrifying words. Her entire face was pale, and her eyes were filled with fear. Feng Ling narrowed her eyes coldly, the muzzle still aimed at her head, and sneered. Do you want me to remind you again? I grew up drinking wolf's milk. Feng Mingzhu trembled under her gaze. From the beginning to now, you're just a prey that can be torn apart at any time in front of me. I don't touch you because you're a member of the Feng family. Secondly, I never thought that a person could be so stupid that she could kill her own parents. If you were smart enough, it would be fine. At least, you wouldn't harm others and yourself. But unfortunately, you're really stupid to the point that you deserve to die. Feng Ling coldly looked at her face that was filled with fear. Feng Mingzhu, do you really want to taste the feeling of being torn apart? I don't. Feng Mingzhu breathed heavily and abruptly tried to get up from the ground. However, the moment she got up, she was kicked to the ground by Feng Ling again. Her head hit the empty chair by the side and trembled miserably on the ground for a long time. Then she curled up and leaned against the chair, barely managing to sit up. She looked carefully at the thing in Feng Ling's hand. That gun. Seeing the fear and concern in her eyes, Feng Ling's eyes were still cold. Don't worry, this is a silencer gun. Even if I kill you here, few people will hear it. Feng Mingzhu trembled all over and carefully looked at the expressionless members of 11 base around her. Obviously, if Feng Ling really wanted to kill someone, these people would definitely surround her, and she had no chance of breaking through the encirclement. She shrank her neck and leaned against the ground in a sorry state. Suddenly, there were two muffled sounds in the air. Before Feng Mingzhu could react, she saw two dazzling sparks coming out of the muzzle of the gun in Feng Ling's hand. She was so frightened that her heart was in her throat, and her whole body trembled violently. However, the two bullets that came out of the silencer only hit the seat behind her. The shooting was so accurate that it only hit the metal backrest behind the seat and did not damage the seat. The bullets hit the metal backrest and bounced back, directly hitting Feng Mingzhu's shoulder. It was so painful that even though her shoulder was not hit by the bullets, it still hurt. How do you want to die? Feng Ling's voice was indifferent, and her eyes were cold as she looked at her. She just stood there, looking down at her, and she had no intention of putting the silencer gun back. Feng Mingzhu's face was deathly pale. She wanted to hold the back of the chair behind her to stand up, but after trying for a long time, she couldn't get up. She stared blankly at Feng Ling. It wasn't easy for her to prop her legs up, but this time, Feng Ling shot the ground under her feet. Ah! She was so frightened that she fell heavily back to the ground. She felt that the bullet was close to her feet. If she dared to move again, her bullet would definitely hit her. Feng Ling, what exactly do you want? Feng Mingzhu sat stiffly on the ground for a long time, and in the end, she seemed to be about to be driven crazy. She looked at her blankly. What? He didn't even plan on going back to acknowledge his parents. Now he was going to avenge his parents with righteous indignation? What right do you have to avenge them? Who do you think you are? Do you think I'm really afraid of you? Ah! Another shot. This time, it brushed past her ear, accurately brushing past her earlobe, leaving behind a scorched trail of blood. The bullet once again landed on the back of the metal chair behind her, making a crisp dang sound. Feng Mingzhu was so shocked that she swallowed back all the words she was about to say due to the shock. Chapter 1265. Feng Ling really wanted to take her life just like that. She really couldn't bear to see her like this. At the thought of the fire in the Malibu jungle and Qin Xiu, who was pushed out of the emergency room with a white cloth, she wished she could kill her on the spot. After several consecutive mental tortures, Feng Mingzhu, who had already broken down, burst into tears. She clutched her clothes tightly with both hands, but her eyes were filled with fear. She didn't even have the strength to get up. Feng Ling held the gun in her hand tightly and looked at her. Every word was cold and clear. I promised Li Nanheng that I wouldn't do anything illegal and wouldn't let him worry. I won't take your life. Keep it and slowly waste it in the cold prison. Feng Mingzhu trembled and looked at her in disbelief. What are you going to do? There's no death penalty in American law. Feng Ling, if you dare. At this moment, the cold muzzle of the gun was suddenly pressed against her forehead. Feng Ling walked forward, leaned down, and pressed the muzzle against her. She said lightly, "There's no death penalty in the law, but I do. Unfortunately, death is too easy. It's better to let you suffer in prison for the rest of your life. I'll let you repent and torture yourself every day and night for killing your parents with your own hands." Feng Mingzhu opened her mouth. "You." At this moment, Feng Ling put away the gun and no longer looked at her. She turned around expressionlessly and walked away. After taking a few steps, she said coldly, "Take her away." Behind her, Feng Mingzhu screamed in horror as she was dragged up by the members of 11 Base. Feng Ling quickly walked out of the airport hall with her hands in her pockets. She had been suppressing her temper, that was on the verge of erupting. She was afraid that if she really couldn't control it well, Feng Mingzhu would really die here. She knew very well just how much she wanted to kill Feng Mingzhu right now. She endured it until her hands trembled. She endured it until the tip of her tongue hurt from being bitten by her, and the taste of blood spread in her mouth. Only then did she calm down. She put the safety of the gun in her pocket back on to prevent herself, or the people accompanying her from accidentally injuring herself, or the people accompanying her. Feng Mingzhu was dragged into the car and kept screaming. Feng Ling did not look back. She only looked at the blue sky above the airport highway in the distance. It had been a long time since she had seen the sky like this. In the forest, she had always lived in the shade of the dense forest. Although there were occasional rays of sunlight, it was not much. It had been a long time since she had seen such a clear blue sky. Feng Mingzhu returned to the hospital. As she promised, she only caught Feng Mingzhu back and asked the people of 11 Base to take her to the police station. Feng Mingzhu was now stimulated by the death of her parents and was incoherent, but all the evidence was with her. As long as she handed it over to the police, they would find out what method she used to set fire to the forest so smoothly. However, when she returned to the hospital, there were not many people left in the hospital. The two elders of the Feng family had been traumatized and had been accompanied by a psychiatrist. Mr. Feng and Mrs. Feng were in the morgue. Feng Ling didn't know what else she could do in this place, so after entering the hospital, she did not enter again. Instead, she sat on the bench by the side of the hall on the first floor. Her eyes were lifeless as she sat there motionlessly. Li Nanheng learned that she had returned, but he did not wait for her to go upstairs. Not long after, he learned from the members of the base that she was sitting on the first floor in a daze and walked down. He was walking on the escalator, facing where Feng Ling was sitting. The man walked over step by step. Feng Ling's eyes were indeed looking in that direction, but she seemed to have lost focus, as though she hadn't seen anything. Clearly, she had fallen into a kind of self-consciousness. When she vaguely felt a familiar aura, Feng Ling's eyes moved, and she recovered some energy. She raised her eyes to meet Li Nanheng's gaze. The man had already walked up to her and looked down at her. "I didn't kill her," Feng Ling said stiffly and mechanically. Li Nanheng reached out and stroked her face. "I know." All the wariness and thorns in her body seemed to be instinctively retracted in front of him. Because of the man's approach, Feng Ling pressed her head against his body and pressed her forehead against his abdomen. She whispered, "I don't know what else I can do. The Feng family is in a mess right now. I didn't want to have anything to do with the people in this family, but I can't control myself now. I really feel terrible." Li Nanheng gently patted her shoulder. "Leave everything to me." Feng Ling pressed her head against his firm abdomen and closed her eyes. She raised her hands and silently hugged him. After a long time, she asked in a low voice, "What should I do next?" She didn't know if her senses were wrong, but she seemed to feel that after a few seconds of silence, Li Nanheng touched her hair. "Let's deal with Mrs. Feng and Mr. Feng's funeral first. After sending them away, I'll tell you what you should do." At this time, Feng Ling trusted Li Nanheng unconditionally. She also believed that everything he did for her was developing in a good direction. She also knew that he would definitely plan a good situation for her. Everything would be arranged according to her. However, her home in the jungle was gone. She hugged him tightly and said in a muffled and hoarse voice, "In the future, Li Nanheng interrupted her and said warmly, "You haven't slept well these days. We'll deal with the funeral tomorrow. Go to sleep first. I'll accompany you." Feng Ling nodded and was about to get up when the man hugged her. Before she could react, he picked her up by the waist. She was startled. The moment the man picked her up, she turned to meet his gaze. She instinctively wrapped her hands around his neck and looked at the man's face and his firm, dark eyes that seemed to be able to cover all pain and suffering for her. At this moment, she suddenly rejoiced that she had held back. She didn't like to cause trouble for Li Nanheng, even though she knew that even if she really shot Feng Mingzhu at the airport, Li Nanheng still had the ability to protect her. But she didn't want to cause trouble for him. Li Nanheng hoped that everything would be fine for her. He didn't want her to be involved in these troublesome matters. Looking at the man's cold and clean-side profile, Feng Ling's fatigue finally surged into her heart. She closed her eyes and leaned against his shoulder, allowing him to carry her to the break room. Chapter 1266. Feng Ling didn't know how to deal with her parents' funeral. After Feng Mingzhu was taken away, she had been in a daze for the past few days. During this period, she had cooperated with the psychiatrist to treat the two elders of the Feng family and had visited them. The two elders were already old. In just a few days, the white-haired people had sent off the black-haired people, and they had become even more haggard. However, when they saw that Feng Ling was still standing here, they felt somewhat relieved. Feng Ling wasn't sure if they knew about Feng Mingzhu. They didn't mention Feng Mingzhu's name, so they should know. If they didn't mention her name, it meant that they didn't want to mention these things anymore. This was a good thing. This was enough to show that the two elders were not stupid people. They knew the truth. Even if she was their own granddaughter, they couldn't protect her after discovering such a thing. In fact, Feng Mingzhu's original intention was to burn Feng Ling to death. This intention was even more chilling. No matter how one looked at it, Feng Mingzhu was completely defeated because of her poor planning and excessive haste. She would never be able to come out again in her lifetime. When the matter with the Feng family came to an end, the member of the base who was in charge of dealing with the jungle returned and brought her a few photos of the scene. Feng Ling looked at the enlarged photos on the screen of her phone and saw that the jungle she had lived in since she was a child had completely turned into a charred ruin. The entire jungle with a radius of thousands of hectares was no longer recognizable. The members of the base took photos of the house and cave where she and Li Nanheng lived. As the house was near the cave, there weren't many trees around. The tall grass had long been cleared because they lived there. There was nothing flammable within a few hundred meters, so only the left corner of the cabin had been burned a little. The originally beautiful cabin had now been completely blackened. The clean, tidy, and lively little yard that she and Li Nanheng had personally built was now completely gone. Even though the house was still there and the outline of the house could still be seen clearly, it could no longer be lived in. The psychiatrist that Li Nanheng had arranged for the two elders of the Feng family accompanied them home. For the time being, he needed to observe them for a period of time. After all, these two elderly people were old and had seen a lot of things. Although it was really painful for the elderly to send off the young, they had recovered well. After a few days of psychological treatment and emotional control, as well as the quiet funeral arrangements, the two elderly people just wanted to go back and rest for a while. Li Nanheng was in charge of the matter. He did not let Feng Ling interfere. After everything was done, Feng Ling stood in front of the hospital door and watched as the two elders of the Feng family were helped into the car. Kay walked behind her. Are you really not going back to the Feng family with them? Feng Ling's family background was not spread in the base, but the people around her had basically learned about it after these days. If the Feng family needs help, I will do my best to help, but there is only 11 base behind me. If there is anything that can be called back, it is only 11 base. Feng Ling said softly as she watched the two old people's car leave. Kay nodded. That's good. You haven't come into contact with outsiders for so many years. In the beginning we were worried. If you really followed these two elders back to the Feng family to become the daughter of some rich family, that kind of scene really feels very strange, and you definitely won't be used to it. But then again, Boss Li really spoils you enough. He has accompanied you outside for so long. Now you can finally return to the team, right? The group of newbies you trained back then is now quite good. You can go back at any time to continue training the newbies. Anyway, their drill master is temporarily sent by Han Jin. On the other side, Kay was chatting and laughing with Feng Ling, and Feng Ling also responded from time to time. Li Nanheng came back from outside, and his gaze fell on Kay. Kay's expression faltered, and he quickly took 2 steps back from Feng Ling's side. He then said with a smile, Boss, I'm talking to Feng Ling. I'm afraid that she will go back to the Feng family with us, because her heart aches for her grandparents. But I've already gotten the truth out of her. She has no intention of going back at all. Boss, you've been waiting for a long time. Was he trying to trick her? Feng Ling didn't smile much, but hearing Kay's words, she smiled helplessly. Boss knows better than me what I think. Do I need you to trick me? I've never wanted to leave you guys. All right. You are the most loyal to the base. Kay glanced at her. I won't disturb you from showing your loyalty in front of Boss. I'll leave first. When you return to the base, the brothers will give you and Boss a good welcome. Feng Ling nodded. She couldn't go back to the jungle. She had planned to return to the base after winter, but now it was only a few months ahead of schedule, so it was fine. Li Nanheng did not speak, but Feng Ling instinctively felt that he had something to say. After Kay left, she looked up at him. Boss, She had always been embarrassed to call him husband or something. Usually, she would just call him Nanheng. To her, the most intimate and familiar thing was to call him boss. Even in the past 6 months in the jungle, she often called him by his full name or boss. Except when he always forced her to call him husband in bed. Nanheng did not force her to change her way of addressing him. Let's go. Where to? Home. When Fengling heard these 2 words, the first thing that came to her mind was the cabin in the jungle that had been blackened to the point where no one could live in it anymore. She dispelled this unrealistic idea and thought of the Feng family. Neither seemed possible, so she didn't understand which home he was talking about. However, what happened recently made her used to listening to his arrangements. She didn't ask much and followed him. She opened the door and was about to sit in the car when she suddenly saw a document bag placed on the passenger seat. She glanced at it, picked it up and asked him, "What is this?" "It's for you." Li Nanheng didn't look at the document bag in her hand and replied, "Get in the car and go home first. There's no hurry to read it." Fengling got into the car and looked at the document bag in her hand. She didn't see any words on it. He said he was not in a hurry to read it, so she didn't look at it and placed it in the box by the car door. Begging for monthly votes. Chapter 1267. Fengling didn't know what Li Nanheng was trying to tell her about going home. Recently, because of the Feng family's matter, Fengling wasn't mentally exhausted, but her mood was definitely affected. She didn't have the mood to consider many things. Right now, the only reason why she could return to normal was that she had been used to being alone since she was young. Her concept of family affection was very vague. The death of her parents was indeed very sad, but she didn't always put her unhappiness on the surface. A few days ago, when she went to talk to grandmother Feng, she heard that Qin Qiu had long known about her. However, because she could tell that Fengling liked freedom and didn't want to return to the Feng family, she respected her choice and didn't disturb her. What kind of gentle woman was Qin Qiu? Fengling was deeply gratified and proud that she had such a mother. Even though they were separated forever, at least her heart was warm. Li Nanheng drove the car to a large supermarket in Los Angeles. Fengling didn't understand what he wanted to buy, so she got out of the car and walked in. In the end, the man bought a bunch of ingredients and hot pot seasonings. This scene was very similar to when he helped her cook hot pot at home. Was he planning to accompany her for a while before returning to the base? After all, although every day in the jungle was peaceful and happy, he really could not eat hot pot. Usually, he ate whatever was available. He had almost forgotten the taste of the food outside after a long time. He had gone out to buy something at the last minute that day, but in fact, the taste was very average near the beach. Seeing the seasonings and hot pot ingredients that the man had placed in the shopping cart, Fengling subconsciously swallowed and accompanied him to choose various ingredients and vegetables. The 2 of them walked in the supermarket for a long time and bought one thing after another in the car. At first, Fengling thought that Li Nanheng planned to stay in the home he mentioned for a while, so that she could ease the regret of not being able to return to the jungle. So she wanted to buy more things. However, later, she found that Li Nanheng did not continue to put things in the shopping cart. Instead, he seemed to be delaying for a long time. He walked aimlessly in the supermarket, and time passed bit by bit. Fengling asked him if he had anything to buy, but he forgot. What did he want to buy? He then casually picked up a bottle of sesame paste from the supermarket shelf. "I forgot, but I heard that hot pot with this kind of sesame paste is common in China. I can buy it and try it." "All right." Fengling checked the things in the shopping cart. "It's almost enough. I've already bought a lot." The man glanced at her and pushed the shopping cart to the cashier. In the end, they did buy a lot of things. There were 2 big bags full. Fengling was afraid that the bags would fall out because they were too heavy, so she specially bought 2 more shopping bags. She wanted to help carry them, but Li Nanheng had already picked up the bags and carried them out. She followed behind and watched the man's tall and straight back. She felt that he was going to use this hot pot to fill her to death. Otherwise, why would he buy so many? When you say go home, Do you mean go back here? Feng Ling looked at Li Nanheng's apartment in Los Angeles and looked up. She still remembered that on the floor below his apartment, he was the one who bought the apartment for her. She had never lived in her own apartment. Li Nanheng didn't speak, but got out of the car and carried the things he had bought in. This man seemed particularly silent today. Feng Ling was about to get out of the car when she suddenly heard him remind her to take out the file in the car. Hearing this, Feng Ling picked up the file, got out of the car and walked out. When she followed him into the apartment, she saw that the security guards outside were still the same too. In fact, she hadn't been here many times, but the security guards seemed to recognize her. They smiled politely and warmly at her as if asking, "Ah, I haven't seen you for many years. You're finally back." Feng Ling responded with a faint smile. It was not until Li Nanheng, who had already entered the elevator, urged her to go over that she quickly followed him into the elevator. The two security guards outside the door were surprised by Feng Ling's smile. This young lady who appeared with Mr. Li had short hair. At that time, she was dressed like a little boy and never smiled at strangers. Her face was always cold, but just now her hair had grown quite a bit. It looked like it was almost the length of her neck. Her hair was soft, and her personality seemed to be much calmer and gentler. She was no longer so cold and distant, and she could even smile at them. In just a few years, the callous young man had transformed into a gentle and peaceful woman. Feng Ling's personality had never changed. It was just that in the past, she was used to hiding herself and didn't like to be close to others. She never smiled at others because she didn't know why she should smile. Was there a need to smile? In the past few years, she had been sharpened and experienced many things. She no longer treated people with the same attitude as before, but she was still the same person in her bones. It was just that she seemed to be a lot gentler. The tomboy who had dressed up as a man back then looked very different from the carefree Feng Ling, who had grown a bit of hair. As a result, when the security guard outside the door looked at her with a smile, his eyes seemed to be a little stunned. Feng Ling was thinking in the elevator. At the same time, she was considering if she should find time to trim her hair again. She hadn't cut it in the jungle. Now that it was so long, it seemed like it could be tied up. However, she might need some small clips to clip some stray hair by her ears. Before she could think about it, the elevator stopped. Li Nanheng did not speak and walked out. She quickly followed him with the document in her hand. When the door opened, she walked into the apartment she had lived in when she was recuperating. Looking at the clean interior and the clean indoor slippers in front of the door, she knew that although no one had lived in this apartment for a long time, the auntie must have taken time to clean it. Such cleanliness was indeed in line with Li Nanheng's usual obsession with cleanliness. If his own apartment was covered in dust, he probably wouldn't be able to accompany her to clean the house like he did in the jungle. Li Nanheng put the two shopping bags aside and turned back to see that Feng Ling was still standing at the door. His cold brows moved. "What? Are you used to living in the wooden house and don't dare to enter the apartment outside? Haven't you been here before?" Feng Ling was slightly embarrassed and quickly changed her shoes. As she did so, she said, "I remember that the floor below is the apartment you bought for me. And it's been renovated a long time ago, but you probably won't have a chance to live in it. Just leave it for now," the man said lightly, and picked up the shopping bag to enter the kitchen. Chapter 1268. If she came here, she would stay with him. She definitely wouldn't have a chance to stay here. Feng Ling saw that he had entered the kitchen and followed him to take a look. She had just moved close to his back when the man pulled her into his arms. He lowered his head and stole a kiss on her lips. He then pressed his lips against her ear and said, "Go wash the fruits and cut some fruits to eat. We'll cook hot pot tonight." Feng Ling instinctively turned her neck to the side because of the man's voice and breath. Li Nanheng looked at her white neck, chuckled, and bit her neck again. She cried out in pain and quickly pushed him away. She wanted to help him, but when they were in the jungle, this man had already developed the habit of taking care of her everywhere. He almost let her idle by the side. Now that he arranged for her to wash the fruit, he was already giving her face. She took out the small bag of fruit from the shopping bag in front of him and went to the side to turn on the tap to wash it. After the sound of water flowing for a while, Fengling washed and cut the fruit and placed it on the fruit plate. She then picked up a piece of pineapple with a fork and handed it to Li Nanheng's mouth. Li Nanheng took a bite and, as she expected, frowned. Why is it sour again? How many pineapples aren't sour? As Fengling spoke, she picked up a piece of sweet pear and placed it by his mouth. The man lowered his head and was about to eat it, but she suddenly took the pear back and ate it herself. Li Nanheng raised his eyebrows and glanced at her because of her mischievous actions, but Fengling said as she forked other fruits, I won't give you the pear. 2 days ago, I heard Kay and the others say that pears are not suitable for sharing. Then I'll give you grapes. After stuffing the grapes into the man's mouth, she returned to the living room with the fruit plate in satisfaction. She put down the fruit plate and glanced at the document bag on the coffee table, remembering that he said it was for her. She was about to pick it up and open it to see what it was. There are clothes you can wear in the closet in the bedroom. Go change into comfortable clothes. The man's voice came from the kitchen. Fengling's eyes shifted to the bedroom. She hadn't lived in his apartment for long. Why would there be clothes for her? She subconsciously walked into the bedroom and opened the door of the closet. Sure enough, there were a few women's clothes in her size. They were all new and the tags had not been removed. When did he buy them? It couldn't have been recently. In other words, after she stayed here for a few days, Li Nanheng had specially bought a few new clothes to put here, because of all the inconveniences. She was wearing casual clothes in the jungle. These days, because of her parents and the Feng family's second son, she didn't pay much attention to her clothes in the hospital. She needed to change, so Kay and the others brought some clothes from the base that she could wear. However, those straight men didn't know how to search for clothes in her empty room, so they casually picked 2 uniforms and sent them to her. The black combat uniform did look valiant and heroic, but it was inconvenient to wear it at home. Moreover, it was tight-fitting. Fengling picked out several new clothes and finally chose the softest and most comfortable short-sleeved t-shirt and sporty light-colored trousers. Because her long hair made the back of her neck itchy, she casually combed her hair back, but she never had anything to tie her hair with. A grown man like Li Nanheng definitely wouldn't have one. A few things she had bought in the supermarket appeared in front of her eyes. Her eyes lit up and she walked out. After going to the kitchen, she rummaged through the shopping bag by Li Nanheng's hand. Sure enough, she found 2 vegetables tied with rubber bands. After removing the rubber bands, she combed her hair back and tied it into a ponytail. However, because it was not long enough, some strands of hair on both sides of her cheeks fell forward and covered her cheeks. Li Nanheng watched her movements and then looked at her hair for a long time. Fengling put away the bundle of vegetables she had just untied and took out other things from the shopping bag to help him pack up. She subconsciously looked up at him. What are you looking at? The little woman's hair was half tied behind her head. Because there was hair on both sides of her cheeks, when she raised her head, she shook her head slightly. Her eyes were clear and clean. Li Nanheng's heart softened. He habitually raised his hand to rub her hair, but when he saw the little tail she had tied up, he subconsciously retracted his hand. In the end, his fingers landed on her cheek and helped her tuck the strand of hair behind her ear. Fengling blinked and looked at him. My hair is long. It's inconvenient to do anything. Can I cut it tomorrow? She did not say that she was going to cut it, but asked for his opinion. After all, she had heard that men usually liked women with long hair. Although she was not used to it, after being in the jungle for so long, her hair had grown to her neck. No matter how unaccustomed she was, she had gradually gotten used to it. She just felt it was inconvenient occasionally. Do whatever you feel comfortable doing. In my eyes, even if you shave your hair like mine, you'll still look good. The man smiled. Fengling was coaxed by his words, and a smile appeared on her face. There are so many ingredients. How long will it take for you to clean up? You didn't eat much at noon. Don't eat too late at night. I'll clean up with you. The man did not stop her. He glanced at her and curved his lips. You're becoming more and more like a virtuous little wife. I'm letting you enjoy more. Now that you're back, you should be more comfortable. I'm quite comfortable. People can only see many things after experiencing some things, but I'm glad that I've seen through them before I experienced them, Feng Ling said as she picked the vegetables. I've thought about the Feng family. In the future, I'll take some time to visit the two elders and visit my parents' graves regularly. But life has to continue. The only regret is that small wooden cabin, but I always remember what you said. As long as you're there, it's home, so I actually like to do things with you. This way, there's the feeling of two people living together. I feel very satisfied. Feng Ling usually did not speak much. Even when she was in the jungle, she often sat by the side and watched Li Nanheng busy himself. She did not say much, but at that time, the smile in her eyes grew wider and wider. This was the first time she had opened her heart to him and told him what was on her mind. It was also the first time she had talked about so many things in her heart. Chapter 1269. It was rare to hear Feng Ling's heartfelt words. Li Nanheng smiled, wiped his hands clean, and pressed her into his arms. He lowered his head and pressed his forehead against hers. His nose was pressed against hers, and there was only half a finger's distance between their lips, but their breaths were intertwined. So you love me very, very much now? The man's voice was low and husky, and he kissed her on the lips, taking advantage of her. Feng Ling was just telling him the truth. She didn't know why he was suddenly in heat, and she hadn't washed her hands yet. She quickly stretched out their hands to avoid dirtying his clothes, and then dodged back. Li Nanheng, don't you know shame in your life? I just said a word and you kissed. However, the man directly pecked her lips again. What are you embarrassed about? I really don't know. I only know that you said you liked to do anything with me. You said you liked the feeling of coexisting with me. This is dependence, understand? Feng Ling, the days we spent in the jungle have made you completely accustomed to relying on me. No matter what happens in the future, you have to remember this feeling. No matter where you are, you have to think of me first when you encounter something. I will definitely be worthy of your dependence, Sen? As he spoke, he kissed the corner of her lips. No matter where you are, I will stand behind you. Where else can I go? Feng Ling didn't understand what he meant. She glared at him and quickly pushed him away. All right, hurry up and wash the vegetables. If you continue to dawdle, you'll probably eat very late tonight. She quickly left the kitchen. Otherwise, this man would probably continue kissing and wasting time. Feng Ling hadn't used her phone for many months. A few days ago, she had just recharged her phone, but she didn't know many people, so she only used text messages to contact a few familiar people. The others were also members of 11 Base. They all knew her situation, so there was no need to respond. By the time she installed a few new mobile apps that had been released in the past 6 months on her phone, the aroma of hot pot seasoning wafted out of the kitchen. After a while, she put down her phone and did not turn on the TV. The days she used to live in the jungle were even quieter than this, but she didn't feel bored at all. She really liked to watch Li Nanheng by the side, just like how Li Nanheng always liked to watch her in the past. Liking someone and loving someone was like this. There was no need to do anything special. As long as he was by your side, and you could look at him closely, it was the greatest satisfaction. She ran to the kitchen door and watched Li Nanheng busy, helping her prepare the ingredients for the hot pot. She leaned against the door and watched him. Feeling her gaze, Li Nanheng looked back at her. Their eyes met. Even though the kitchen was filled with the smell of the hot pot and steam was rising from the pot, he could see the great satisfaction in Feng Ling's eyes. In fact, Feng Ling was not as cold and unapproachable as she had appeared for many years. She was actually a very simple person. She was so simple that there was no need to specially coax her. She was easily satisfied. Go get the bowls and chopsticks. I'll bring the hot pot out. It'll be ready soon. Li Nanheng gave her a look. All right. Feng Ling cooperatively rushed in to get the cutlery. She quickly walked in and out, placing the cutlery on the dining table one by one. The dinner was very satisfying. This was the first time she had sat at home and eaten so quietly since leaving the jungle. Furthermore, It was the kind of leisurely way where she could take a shower and sleep after eating. Feng Ling was the one eating most of the time. Li Nanheng kept helping her cook the food she liked. After he was done, he put it into the bowl in front of her. Li Nanheng was a man who didn't care about trifles. Furthermore, he exercised a lot and had a good figure. Under normal circumstances, he would eat more than her. And when he ate with her, he would eat a lot. However, today, with the steaming hot pot in front of him, he didn't seem to eat much. Most of the time, he helped her cook all kinds of food. He only occasionally picked up a few chopsticks. "Aren't you hungry?" Feng Ling asked. She remembered that he hadn't eaten or slept well recently, and he hadn't eaten much today. "I'll watch you eat first. I'm not in a hurry." The man continued to help her cook the meat and put it into the bowl in front of her. At this moment, the man's phone rang. After looking at the caller ID, he signaled for her to eat first and got up to answer the phone. Feng Ling ate the meat in her bowl and turned to look at the man who had walked to the window to answer the phone. From the content of the conversation, it seemed to be about the internal affairs of 11 Base. After listening for a while, she dipped a few pieces of meat and put them into Li Nanheng's bowl. Sure enough, after the man hung up the phone and returned, he saw the meat piled up like a small mountain in the bowl and glanced at her. "What? Are you afraid I'll starve? You're treating me like a pig now. I have to do the same." Feng Ling blinked at him. Li Nanheng smiled. In the evening after dinner, although the hot pot had been removed, every corner of the apartment seemed to be filled with the smell of hot pot. Feng Ling went to take a shower and saw that Li Nanheng, who had already taken a shower, was wearing a dark blue bathrobe and was lying casually on the bed in the bedroom. He was holding a remote control in his hand and watching TV. However, he kept changing the channel, and there seemed to be nothing to watch. The curved screen TV, hanging on the bedroom wall, kept changing the programs of various channels, and the languages of various countries frequently changed. Feng Ling did not dry her hair. Her body was warm, but her hair was a little cold. She lifted the quilt at the end of the bed and crawled in. Then she crawled out of the quilt and approached the man. She was about to speak when from the corner of her eye, she saw that the file she had placed on the coffee table was placed on the bedside table. She hadn't had the time to look at what was inside all day. She originally wanted to play with him, but she was immediately attracted. She reached out to take a look. What exactly is inside? However, before her hand could touch it, her waist was suddenly held by the man's hand. She was wrapped in a bath towel. When the man turned her over and pressed her down on the bed, he quickly untied her. A few days ago, she didn't even have the time or mood to be intimate in the hospital. Right now, the man seemed to be unable to hold back. He kissed her eagerly, and his breathing was heavy. This was also the first night after leaving the jungle and returning to normal life. Feng Ling's heart warmed, and she took the initiative to respond. The man groaned on her body, and the kiss on her lips almost turned into a fierce bite. This night, it was not an exaggeration to say that they were entangled to death. In the end, Feng Ling lost her strength and fell asleep. However, she woke up before dawn because she had a nightmare and could not sleep. She quietly got up and saw the file on the bedside table. She reached out to take it and opened it. After flipping through page by page, she saw the words Feng Ling and expelled from the base. Her gaze paused, and she abruptly turned to look at the man who had woken up. Chapter 1270. Li Nanheng, what is this? Feng Ling held the document that removed her from the base. The man sat up on the bed and said indifferently, "After dawn, I'll send you back to the Feng family." Feng Ling stared at him for a long time. In the end, she pursed her lips and suddenly felt that her shoulder outside the blanket was a little cold. It was so cold that she couldn't help but shiver. Li Nanheng saw it and was about to help her pull the blanket up, but Feng Ling abruptly moved to the side and avoided his hand. At the same time, she raised the document that removed her from the base and placed the contents of the removal and his signature and seal in front of him. Why? She didn't ask why she wanted him to return to the Feng family. Instead, she asked why he removed her from the base. Why did he remove her from the base? This was equivalent to completely kicking her out of 11 base. She could never go back. She didn't even have a way out. Even if the members of 11 base died, they would die with the name of 11 base. Being removed from the base was a punishment that only members who had made a particularly serious mistake would receive. Furthermore, after being removed from the base, they would never be able to enter again in this life. From now on, she wouldn't even be able to enter a training camp for newcomers, let alone be an instructor or a sniper team, because she was completely unqualified. She was completely rejected by 11 base. Your father, Mr. Feng's last wish was for me to send you back to the Feng family, cut off all paths of retreat, and force you to go back. Li Nanheng didn't want to hide it from her. He knew that the Feng family had let you down, but he had no choice but to place the burden of the Feng family's future on you. You would only choose to go back when you had no way out. He hoped that you could truly grow up, and that one day, you could become a towering tree of the Feng family and support the entire family. Asking me to cut off your path of retreat is equivalent to cutting off everything for me. Li Nanheng looked at her. I can understand his thoughts, and try my best to respect his last wish. However, the only thing I can do is to make you never return to the base again. It's impossible for me to cut off all contact with you. Feng Ling's hand trembled as she held the document. It turned out that her father had called Li Nanheng into the emergency room and told him this at the last moment of his life. Most of what 11 base has experienced is a matter of life and death. This kind of danger only exists on the surface. Whether we live or die, we will have a good time. Li Nanheng said. In the outside world, people kill without spilling blood. That's the real danger. After experiencing despair and pain, perhaps you will grow. Perhaps you will become braver and stronger because you've risked everything. But I don't intend to let you experience that. I can't abandon you. I'll accompany you to grow. Even if I'm not in the base in the future, I'll always stand by your side and... As the man spoke, he raised his hand to pull her out of the quilt and hug her. However, Feng Ling's eyes were cold, and she moved back an inch. Her voice was indifferent and emotionless. She only said, Li Nanheng, you said you would never push me away. I didn't push you away. Li Nanheng looked into her eyes. I will accompany you. I will change my identity and role. I will no longer be bossly, but just Li Nanheng. When Feng Ling heard this, she suddenly smiled and put down the document in her hand. Her bare shoulders outside the quilt felt cold. Do you know what 11 base is to me? I know. Then do you know what this document that removed me from 11 base represents? Feng Ling looked at him, and her eyes gradually became bloodshot. However, she still forced herself to suppress it, and clenched the quilt tightly with her fingers. I know. I once told Feng Mingzhu that since I was a child I had nothing. The only thing I had was 11 base behind me. But I didn't expect that one day, I would be removed from the base. It was no longer as simple as driving me away. Instead, I was removed from the base and cut off all the connections between me and 11 base. Li Nanheng, how can you do this? Li Nanheng's voice was very, very light, as if the wind would blow it away at any time. But I didn't expect that one day, I would be removed from the base. Feng Ling, listen to me. The business world is not like the battlefield. If you want the Feng family, you have to cut off ties with the base. Otherwise you don't have to say it. I understand. Feng Ling looked at him coldly. I understand all the stakes. As long as I'm no longer a member of 11 base, the grudges between me and the terrorists I fought with will disappear. If there's any trouble, they won't look for me first but will only target 11 base, right? I understand everything. I understand everything. Even now, you haven't even asked me a word, and have already made all the decisions for me. Do I have any chance to object? Even if I cry, throw a tantrum, or beg you endlessly, I still can't go back, because all of this has already been decided in your hands. Feng Ling slammed the stack of documents in her hand on the pillow in front of him. Li Nanheng, have you ever asked me a word? Have you ever considered my thoughts? Even if you asked me if I was willing or not, even if you asked me once. Feng Ling stared at him, and felt as if there was a taste of rust in her throat. The bitterness made her voice hoarse. Li Nanheng, What right do you have to make decisions for me? I was an outstanding member of the team in the base. Feng Ling was the best sniper in 11 base. I trained a group of outstanding and qualified newcomers. My everything is there. You Li Nanheng, what right do you have to drive me away? Feng Ling gritted her teeth and said the last few words. When the man was about to silently hold her in his arms, Feng Ling suddenly shouted angrily, "Don't touch me! Feng Ling! Don't call my name, and don't touch me!" Feng Ling tried her best to calm her breathing, and then slowly got up from the bed. Even though she was naked, she didn't seem to notice. She opened the cabinet and took out a set of clothes. Her movements were somewhat mechanical as she put them on in front of him. Feng Ling, calm down. Don't lose your temper. Although I made arrangements for you, I did it for you. You don't have to say anything. I'm very calm. Feng Ling glanced at him for the last time. You want me to go back to the Feng family, right? All right, I'll do as you wish. Li Nanheng's eyelids twitched. He had thought of Feng Ling's reaction. She would be angry. She might even be so angry that she would hit him, scold him, and question him hysterically. He didn't expect her to be so calm. She was so calm that Li Nanheng, who had already arranged everything for her and wanted to help her pave a way out, panicked for no reason. Chapter 1271. When Feng Ling turned to walk out, she suddenly saw the black base uniform she had changed out of yesterday folded in the open cabinet door. Looking at the uniform, her eyes were filled with a bone-chilling coldness. The words expulsion and the seal on the document kept appearing in her mind. The jungle she had lived in since she was young had been burned down, and her cabin was gone. She thought that she could accept all of this calmly, because at least she still had 11 base and Li Nanheng. But she never expected she would be removed from 11 base. At this moment, she had nothing left. What a good Li Nanheng. He clearly knew how painful it would be for her to be cut, but he actually could bear to do it. Feng Ling clenched her fists tightly in her sleeves and walked out quickly. Feng Ling, stop. Li Nanheng abruptly got out of bed, put on his pants, rushed out, and grabbed her wrist. Feng Ling knew that she couldn't shake him off, so she didn't struggle. She only staggered when the man grabbed her. When she regained her balance, she turned to look at him. I want to go out and be quiet. Her voice was calm. Li Nanheng held her wrist tightly. No, stay here. When you've thought it through, I'll send you back to the Feng family. Li Nanheng, I've tried my best not to yell at you. Let me go out and be quiet. Don't force me. Feng Ling's eyes gradually turned red. I'd rather you yell at me than hold it in like this. Before you really think it through, you can't leave my sight. What right do you have to restrict me? I'm no longer a member of your base. I have my freedom. Feng Ling couldn't help but raise her voice. Let go. Because I'm your man? I'm your future husband. Li Nanheng did not hesitate at all. He had no intention of letting go. At this moment, Feng Ling suddenly smiled. What did you just say? You cut off my path of retreat, but you can't bear to cut off everything about me. You can't do it, you can't bear to, can you? Little by little, Feng Ling looked into his eyes and slowly pulled her hand away from his wrist. When she finally pulled her hand out, she took a step back and rejected all his touch. She said coldly, All right, I'll do it for you. I'll cut it for you. What do you mean? Li Nanheng's eyelids twitched. Li Nanheng, let's break up. Feng Ling's voice was soft but clear. Take back what you said. I'll pretend I never heard it. There's no need to take it back. Feng Ling looked at him coldly. Do you want to cut off my retreat? All right, I'll do it myself. Feng Ling. Li Nanheng. From now on, I have nothing to do with you. If you dare to follow me and pester me again, I will call the police. I am no longer a member of 11 Base. I enjoy the legal rights of an ordinary American citizen. I'll call the police. I will do my best to cut off everything with you. With that, she turned around, pushed open the door and strode out, leaving the fierce-looking man behind, and entered the elevator without looking back. She walked out of the apartment with anger. When she passed by a flower bed, the various external and internal injuries she had suffered from many years ago suddenly exploded in her heart. The wounds on her shoulders, back, and body that had long healed without any scars were screaming in pain. Inch by inch, she felt that something was really cutting her heart. She was in so much pain that her entire body was trembling. Suddenly, she felt a fishy taste in her throat. She stumbled and fell to the side of the flower bed, spitting out a mouthful of blood. She watched helplessly as a large mouthful of blood spurted out. She stood there stiffly for a long time, staring at the blood. Then she took a deep breath, got up and continued to walk out. When she was about to walk out of the apartment, the two security guards saw the blood on the corner of her mouth and chin, and hurriedly came out to ask her what was wrong. But Feng Ling walked out blankly, as if she didn't hear them. Until the roadside, she didn't even look at the alternating traffic lights. She just crossed the road, as if she couldn't see all the cars passing by quickly. Several cars were forced to stop by her ghost-like figure on the road. They were so angry that they stopped their cars and kept honking at her. Someone even stuck out his head and scolded her if she was crazy. Hearing this, Feng Ling turned her eyes and looked coldly at the person who was scolding her. As soon as the people in the car saw the blood on the corner of her mouth and the cold eyes that seemed to be able to freeze people's hearts, they subconsciously closed their mouths, cursed her in a low voice, and quickly drove the car behind her. A few minutes later, the security guard saw Li Nanheng walking out quickly. He hurried forward and asked, "Mr. Li, did something happen?" Li Nanheng had just passed by the flower bed and ignored the security guard's words. His eyes were searching outside, but in the next moment, he suddenly heard the security guard say, "We just saw the lady who came back with you yesterday. Just now, she seemed to be uncomfortable and vomited something." They didn't dare to say that they saw her vomit blood. After all, it sounded scary. How could a person suddenly vomit such a big mouthful of blood? It was not a martial arts drama. Li Nanheng's eyes paused because of the security guard's words, and he turned to look at the flower bed. He only saw a dark dried blood stain on the edge of the flower bed. Blood? He seemed to remember that in the jungle a few days ago, when Feng Ling carried Qin Xiu out, her stomach had been uncomfortable. The day before the incident, she had just vomited and went to the hospital. At that time, she was not feeling well, but she endured all the discomfort and rushed into the sea of fire to carry Qin Xiu out. Later, her complexion had been very bad. Even Li Nanheng thought that she was in a bad state because of the death of her parents. In the next few days, she suffered a series of heavy blows, but she endured it and did not say anything. She did not cry or complain, but quietly and sensibly worked hard to live a good life. Looking at the bloodstain, Li Nanheng instantly felt his temples throbbing. He walked out quickly, only to see the cars driving back and forth on the road, and Feng Ling had disappeared. She only wore a set of clothes when she left, and did not bring her cell phone with her. Li Nanheng went outside and quickly ran around, but did not find her. He then drove around and finally drove back. He asked the security guard to check the surveillance cameras in and out of the community. At the same time, he called the traffic bureau to find all the surveillance cameras on the nearby routes. He shouldn't have been so angry at Feng Ling's words that he delayed for a few minutes. He should have chased after her and detained her. He couldn't let her leave in such a daze. Chapter 1272. Li Nanheng's hand was on the steering wheel. The car circled around within a radius of more than 10 miles, looking for her. As long as he could find her, he would search for any place where there could be people. After searching for several hours, he still couldn't find Feng Ling. At that time, she clearly couldn't have gone too far. She didn't bring anything with her, nor could she have left by car. He had watched the videos submitted by the security guards of the community and the traffic bureau one by one. He could only see Feng Ling walking out of the community alone and crossing the road like a ghost several times in a row. Li Nanheng's brows twitched violently. She had never felt any kinship since she was young. Although the sudden death of her parents was a huge blow to her, it wasn't as big as being removed from 11 base. At the very least, when her parents passed away, Feng Ling could still maintain her sobriety and rationality. However, being removed from 11 base had clearly destroyed her last bit of rationality. In the surveillance footage, Feng Ling had been walking on foot. Combined with all the surveillance footage, it could be seen that she had walked to a lake park 6 to 7 kilometers away before disappearing. She must have entered the park. This was a park used to enjoy the flowers, the lake, and the fitness. There were exits on all sides and surveillance cameras. But the surveillance camera at the back suddenly broke down this week. Feng Ling disappeared after entering the park. Li Nanheng went to search around the park and guarded the exit for a long time. But he didn't see Feng Ling. If it was the Feng Ling from a few years ago, he believed that she wouldn't do anything stupid. She was strong-willed and would never allow her to give in to everything. However, what had happened recently, as well as Feng Ling's habit of learning how to rely on him and how to soften her temper and personality, all sorts of things piled up together. Recalling the pool of blood by the flower bed, Li Nanheng's expression was so dark that it could drip water. He slapped the steering wheel heavily and continued to drive to the north gate of the park. He knew that whether he forced her or coaxed her step by step to solve this matter tactfully, the result would be the same. Even if they had been intimate last night, even if she had taken the initiative to crawl under the blanket and lie on him yesterday, at this moment, she had disappeared without a trace. Li Nanheng found that he often couldn't find her. The reason was that she was different from others. Others would definitely bring a cell phone when they went out, but she often forgot to bring her cell phone. It was difficult to find her even if he wanted to find her. He wished he could tie such a woman to his side every day to prevent her from disappearing at any time. How could he push her away? He would never push her away. But Feng Ling did not accept it. After searching for a long time, he suddenly saw many cars stopping on the road ahead. Li Nanheng rolled down the window and heard someone shouting nearby that there was a car accident ahead. A young girl was hit by a car and was unconscious. Li Nanheng's eyelids twitched, and he hurriedly drove the car over. When he rushed into the crowd, he squeezed through the crowd, only to see that the person lying on the ground was a woman with long hair and exquisite makeup, who was wearing a fashionable skirt and carrying a delicate small bag. He heaved a sigh of relief. Seeing that someone had lifted the young woman who had fallen in a pool of blood in front of the car, Li Nanheng backed the car away. After withdrawing from the crowd, he looked at the bustling road that had begun to be blocked, parked the car by the side of the road, leaned back in the chair, and drove north. His mind was filled with the scene of Feng Ling saying ruthless words before she went out, but her eyes were clearly bloodshot. The car window rolled down. The man placed one hand on the steering wheel, and the other hand took out a cigarette from the car's storage box. He smoked several cigarettes in a row, but he couldn't get rid of the frustration in his heart. When the road ahead was clear, he continued to drive the car. He walked back and forth on all the roads outside the north gate of the park countless times. From dawn to dusk, the car drove away and back countless times. It was as if Feng Ling was born with the knowledge of how to avoid the crowd. Or perhaps it was some of the habits of growing up in a wolf's cave that made her used to choosing a path where no one could see her when she was in a bad mood. Thus, from morning to night, no one had found her, and no one had seen her along the way. For 3 whole days, Feng Ling disappeared for 3 whole days. In 3 days, Li Nanheng shuttled through the streets and alleys of Los Angeles alone. At the same time, he mobilized the search team of 11 base and some police to look for her. The Feng family's villa. In the front yard of the villa, there were 2 gardeners who were repairing the garden flowers that had withered due to the cold weather. When the servants came out of the door, they whispered to each other for a while and then sighed. Who would have thought that in one night, Mrs. Feng and Mr. Feng would suddenly leave the Feng family? The murderer of that strange fire was actually the eldest Miss Feng Mingzhu. There were suddenly 3 people missing in this big family, leaving only 2 old people. It was really sad. Auntie Mai, who had been in the Feng family for many years, wanted to ask several times. Where was the second miss? Didn't they say that the second miss was still alive? Why didn't the second miss come back? However, seeing that the 2 elders of the Feng family needed the psychological comfort and counseling of a psychiatrist every day to barely survive, Auntie Mai did not dare to ask. She could only serve them carefully every day, afraid that their emotions would be unstable and something would happen to them. The Feng family's reputation in Los Angeles was very high. It was definitely a famous family. This storm had caused the Feng family's momentum to decline. After all, the foundation of the Feng Corporation could not be guarded by two old people. The pillar of the Feng family had died in that fire, and the entire family seemed to have fallen into a vicious cycle. The two of them were already so old, and no one had any hope for the Feng family. Even though a skinny camel was still bigger than a horse, the era of the Feng family in the Chinese world of Los Angeles seemed to be coming to an end. Today, the psychiatrist came to visit the two elders on time. He had just finished talking to them and left when Auntie Mai came out to send him off. After sending the doctor off, she was about to turn around when she accidentally saw a thin figure from the corner of her eye. She paused and turned to see a somewhat disheveled figure standing by the roadside, not far from the main entrance of the Feng family. When she saw the face that was somewhat similar to Mrs. Feng's and Mr. Feng's, Auntie Mai was slightly surprised. She quickly turned around and went in. "Grandfather, madam, is the person outside the second miss?" Today the psychiatrist came to visit the two elders on time. When they heard this, they quickly got up and walked out of the front door of the Feng family's front yard. As expected, they saw Feng Ling standing there, but she was in a sorry state. Her clothes seemed to have not been changed for 2 to 3 days. Her face was pale and bloodless, and there was a shadow in her eyes that she had not slept for several days. Her clothes were cold and wet, sticking to her body as though she had been drenched by the freezing rain last night. Feng Ling. When Madame Feng saw her, she was very excited and rushed over. Feng Ling had been standing outside for a long time. The moment she saw the two elders of the Feng family, she wanted to smile, but her vision turned black, and she fainted weakly on the ground. Chapter 1273. Old Madame Feng cried out in shock as she watched her granddaughter, who had appeared in front of the Feng family, suddenly fall to the ground. She was old and her legs were not nimble. As she ran, she called out, "Quick, help her up!" Grandfather Feng walked over quickly and saw Feng Ling being carefully helped up by the servants and gardeners. He frowned. What's wrong with this child? She didn't look so thin in the hospital a few days ago. How did she become so thin in just a few days? Hurry up and help her in. Call a doctor over. Old Madame Feng stepped forward and touched Feng Ling's cold face. Her heart ached, and she couldn't help but say excitedly, "My little granddaughter is actually home. Child, my little granddaughter." When the servants heard this, they didn't dare to delay. They quickly picked up Feng Ling, who was so thin that she didn't weigh much, and brought her into the villa as quickly as possible. Auntie Mai personally helped the unconscious Feng Ling into the bathroom and helped her take a hot shower. She then helped her change into a clean set of clothes and quickly sent her to the bed. The two family doctors from the Feng family had already arrived. As soon as they entered, they quickly examined her. After confirming that Feng Ling had changed her clothes, Grandfather Feng walked in. He stood in the spacious bedroom with his wife and watched Feng Ling, who was lying motionless on the bed. Although Feng Ling was nearly 1.7 meters tall and wasn't considered short among Eastern women, she was too thin. Lying in the 2-meter-wide bed, she was covered with a white down quilt. Her face was almost as white as the quilt. Her hair was still wet and scattered on the pillow. She looked small and fragile, as though she would shatter with a single touch. This was no longer the Feng Ling, who had personally carried her parents out of the fire in the jungle, wearing a heat-resistant suit. "How is it? What happened to her?" Seeing that the two doctors had been examining her for a while, the old lady walked over worriedly and asked, "Madame Feng, don't worry. Don't be anxious. Her life isn't in danger. It's just that she hasn't eaten for days. In addition, her stomach has suffered from severe gastric bleeding in the past few days. Right now, she's only unconscious because her physical strength can't take it anymore. Don't worry." Stomach bleeding. The old lady stood by the bed and looked at Feng Ling's pale face with heartache. After returning to the Feng family, she faced this empty villa for several days. Finally, because of Feng Ling, she felt that this house was no longer so empty. "Leave this place to the doctor first," Grandfather Feng said softly. "Since this child is willing to come back, it's a good thing." We'll talk about it when she wakes up. The news that the second miss of the Feng family had returned revived the entire Feng family. In particular, old Madame Feng was not in a good state a few days ago. In the past 2 days, her health had improved a lot. Even though Feng Ling had been unconscious for an entire day after returning, she had personally cooked a lot of nutritious medicinal soup for her little granddaughter. She had been boiling it on the fire, and the more it was boiled, the more delicious it became. She was waiting for Feng Ling to wake up, so that she could drink it directly to nourish her body. Second Mrs. return is the happiest thing for Madame Dowager these days. Auntie Mai stood outside the kitchen and watched as old Madame Feng, who hadn't cooked for more than 10 years, worked busily inside. At the same time, she sighed and said to Grandfather Feng, who was standing outside the kitchen. Grandfather Feng didn't say anything, but Auntie Mai could tell from the two elders' eyes that they really hoped that second miss would stay in the Feng family in the future. She just didn't know what the second miss had experienced these days. How did she end up like this? She had been unconscious for a day and a night. And why did she suddenly return to the Feng family? Furthermore, when she returned, she didn't bring anything with her. Her identity document, wallet, cell phone, nothing. It was as though she had been wandering all the way back. She recalled that when she saw the second miss outside yesterday, she stood outside the door and looked at the Feng family's villa blankly. She then recalled what had happened to the second miss when she was 1 year old. She almost lost her life in the sea. To be able to survive and return to the Feng family one day was a great gift to the Feng family. It was no wonder that old master and old madam were so happy. In this family, their only hope now was second Mississippi old man. Auntie Mai, quickly help me try it. How does it taste? Old Madame Feng scooped out 2 small bowls of medicinal soup and handed it to them. I didn't add much salt. When she wakes up, she should eat something lighter. See if it's tasty. Is it too bland? Seeing the old lady's excitement, Auntie Mai smiled and tasted it. And then not bad. It's very delicious. Second miss will definitely like it. Grandfather Feng also tasted it and nodded. It's not bad. This time, Madame Feng was even happier. She quickly went back to cook. The old lady, who hadn't entered the kitchen for more than 10 years, was as excited as a child. Feng Ling returned to the Feng family. The news quickly reached Li Nanheng's ears. After confirming that nothing had happened to her outside, and that she had suddenly returned to the Feng family after disappearing for 3 days, Li Nanheng's heart finally relaxed. However, at the same time he began to worry. She said that as he wished. She said that she would personally cut it off. She went back without a word. Did she really plan to cut off the connection between them? How should he cut it? After nearly 8 years of separation and entanglement, how should he cut off the shadows that had long been rooted in their lives? That night, Li Nanheng drove the car to the Feng family's villa. However, he did not enter. Instead, he parked the car outside and looked at the few lit windows in the villa. One of them was a bedroom on the 3rd floor. The lights in that bedroom had never been lit up in the past few years, but now, they were lit up from night to night. Feng Ling should be living in this room right now. Looking at the light in the room, it was as though he could finally feel her existence. Li Nanheng got out of the car and walked over. He stood outside the door of the Feng family and looked at the light in the room. Occasionally, he would see the figures of servants passing by the window. He stood there for an entire night. When the sky brightened, Li Nanheng spat out a ball of white air from his mouth. He still did not leave. At this moment, Auntie Mai sent the doctor out. Just as she walked out, she suddenly saw Li Nanheng, who had been standing outside for a long time. She was surprised. Mr. Li. Li Nanheng answered mildly. You are. Auntie Mai looked at him in disbelief. It was 6 o'clock in the morning. When did he come? So early? Could it be that he had been standing all night? Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 1274. Is she okay? Li Nanheng ignored the confusion and surprise in Auntie Mai's eyes and asked. Auntie Mai had also heard about the second miss and 11 base. Furthermore, the second miss cenotaph was related to Mr. Li in name. She immediately answered. Are you talking about the second miss? She's fine, but she hasn't woken up yet. Li Nanheng's brows suddenly twitched. What do you mean she hasn't woken up? What happened to her? The doctor stayed here all night and just left, Auntie Mai said truthfully. The second miss suddenly returned to the Feng family the day before yesterday. At that time, her clothes were all wet, and her face was frighteningly pale. We just found her, and she fainted on the spot. It's been 2 days, but the second miss hasn't woken up yet. Li Nanheng frowned and looked at the room where Feng Ling was staying. The doctor came to see her earlier and said that the second miss should have had a serious gastric hemorrhage in the past few days. After that, she starved outside for a few days and didn't eat anything. In the past 2 days, there have been 2 freezing rains. She must have been in the freezing rain and caught a cold. Coupled with the problem with her stomach, she is extremely haggard. Yesterday, she was only unconscious. I thought she would wake up today, but last night, the second miss suddenly had a high fever and kept it above 39 degrees. We were so scared that we quickly called the doctor over. The doctor stayed here all night and didn't leave until the second miss's fever subsided. Thinking of the pool of blood by the flower bed that day, Li Nanheng's heart felt as though it had been pierced by countless thorns. How many days had her stomach hurt? But she refused to say a word. He wanted to go in to see her, but this was the Feng family, especially since he had personally rushed back to the Feng family from the base. No matter what the consequences were, he should bear it himself. The master of the family did not come forward to invite him, and he, a junior, barged in. No matter what, it was unreasonable. She's awake, she's awake. The second miss is awake. All of a sudden, a servant's voice came from inside. Hearing this, Auntie Mai immediately turned around and was about to walk back when she suddenly turned back to look at Li Nanheng. Mr. Li, go in and take a look. Please come out and tell me after you're done, Li Nanheng said in a low voice. Ah, okay. Auntie Mai knew that this young Master Li was famous for being not to be trifled with. Seeing that he was so polite and had no intention of barging into the Feng family, she couldn't figure out what was going on between him and the second Mississippi. She nodded and quickly returned to the villa. Feng Ling was indeed awake. She struggled in the darkness and vaguely heard some movements by her ears. From time to time she heard someone talking. She struggled in the darkness for a long time and finally found a trace of light. She tried her best to open her eyes, but it was only a small slit. She frowned and closed her eyes again. Her head. It hurt. After running a high fever for a whole night, he felt sore all over. Second miss, are you awake? Someone said. Who? Feng. Feng Ling's thoughts were a bit muddled. Although the voice by her ears was full of concern, it was an unfamiliar voice. She subconsciously opened her eyes. When she finally opened her eyes, she saw an unfamiliar middle-aged woman standing by the bed and looking at her. She's awake. Quick. The helper saw that her eyes were open. Although they were not focused, she rushed out excitedly to call for someone. Second miss is awake. Quick. Go tell the old madam and the old master. After a while, many people came into the room. Although Feng Ling's eyes were open, she was still unconscious. After a long while, she barely recognized that the people who walked in were Grandmother Feng and Grandfather Feng. Feng Ling, good child. How are you? Does it hurt anywhere? You had a high fever for an entire night yesterday. Grandma was so worried. Grandmother Feng leaned over the bed to look at her. She gently stroked Feng Ling's forehead. Thankfully, you're finally awake. Feng Ling closed her eyes again, composed herself, and opened them again. She remembered that she didn't know where to go. She walked and rested when she was tired. Later, she passed by a shop under the Feng family's name and heard the manager say that she was going to the Feng family's villa. He said that it was not far from that location, so she subconsciously followed. However, after following a villa area, the car drove in. She couldn't keep up with it on foot, so she walked around the villa area. When she reached the door of the Feng family's mansion, she inadvertently saw the old madam's figure in the window. Then she stood there and didn't leave. Later, what happened next? She had a headache, and the entire world seemed to be dark. In the past 3 days, she didn't remember where she had been. Her head hurt. Her body felt uncomfortable, and her stomach hurt so much that her memory of the past 3 days was blurry. She only remembered that she had been walking, and in the end, she actually walked back to the Feng family? Fengling, can you hear Grandma? Seeing that she didn't respond, Grandmother Feng quickly held her hand. If you're not feeling well and don't want to speak, just blink and tell me. Fengling looked at her, and her dry lips moved. She said hoarsely and weakly, I can hear you. Seeing that she was willing to speak, Grandmother Feng smiled in relief. All right. Grandma won't disturb you. If you're tired, continue sleeping. This is the Feng family, your home. You can rest as long as you want. We have to take good care of our bodies. We can't be sick like this. Fengling indeed didn't have much strength to speak. She only felt that Grandmother Feng's hand was holding hers very tightly. Grandfather Feng also stood by the side and looked at her with a smile. The usually dignified old man faced the little granddaughter he had lost and regained. At this moment, his face was filled with benevolence. Auntie Mai walked to the bed and smiled at Fengling. Second miss, I'm Auntie Mai. When you were young, I hugged you all day. In the future, you can tell me anything at home. Fengling glanced at Auntie Mai and nodded thoughtfully. Although the second miss was haggard and weak, she still had the right response. She was not as cold and unapproachable as others said. She immediately smiled and said, By the way, Mr. Li is here. He seems to have been standing outside for an entire night. Second miss, do you want to see him? Mr. Li? Fengling's mind was in a mess. It was painful and messy, but when she heard these words, the blank emotions in her eyes gradually calmed down. She did not speak and closed her eyes. Auntie Mai thought she would agree, but seeing that Fengling's expression didn't seem to have any intention of seeing Li Nanheng, she couldn't make up her mind and could only stand by the bed to look at her. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 1275. After hearing Mr. Li's words, Grandfather Feng said, Nanheng is here? Yes, I saw Mr. Li outside, but he didn't come in. Auntie Mai nodded. In Grandfather Feng's impression, Li Nanheng was really good to Fengling. A few days ago, although he was not in the mood in the hospital, he had coincidentally met him a few times. It could be seen that Li Nanheng really cared about Fengling. But why did Fengling suddenly come back alone and cause him such a mess? When Li Nanheng arrived at the Feng family, he did not enter. Fengling heard that he had come, but she did not speak or let him in. Grandfather Feng temporarily defined their situation as a quarrel. But after the quarrel, the Feng family still knew to return to the Feng family. This was a great relief to them. Child, if you're still tired, take care of your body. If you want to see him, we'll let Nanheng in. But if you don't want to see him for the time being, it's fine, Elder Feng said. No, Fengling said. Although her voice was hoarse, she could hear her determination. Her tone startled Madame Feng, who had been holding her hand. She looked at her closed eyes and asked warmly, Did you quarrel with Nanheng? Fengling did not answer. It was as though hearing Li Nanheng's name had caused her to lose all her patience. She furrowed her brows and was about to withdraw her hand when the old madam held it tightly. All right, Grandma won't ask anymore. Don't be angry. Seeing her emotional conflict with Li Nanheng, Madame Feng quickly continued to hold her hand. At the same time, she turned to Auntie Mai and said, Then go tell him. Don't let him wait outside. All right. Auntie Mai responded and looked at Fengling, seeing that she really had no intention of seeing Li Nanheng. She could only turn and walk out. When she arrived outside, she saw that Li Nanheng was still standing there. There were no extra cigarette butts by his feet. He seemed to have been standing outside quietly for a long time. Mr. Li. Auntie Mai walked out and said softly, I'm very sorry. Although second miss is awake, she doesn't seem to be in a good state of mind. She sleeps and wakes up. It might not be convenient for her to see you. These words were too tactful. In fact, Fengling didn't want to see him, didn't intend to see him, and didn't want to see him. He knew her temper very well, but Li Nanheng didn't expect that the expulsion document would make her so angry. It's okay. Let her rest more, Li Nanheng said indifferently. After a pause, he said in a low voice, Take good care of her. Mr. Li, don't worry. The second miss is the treasure we lost and found. And in this big Feng family, she is the only one worth remembering. We will definitely take good care of her. The Feng family will give her the best, and won't let the second miss suffer the slightest grievance. As Auntie Mai spoke, she sighed with emotion. Her eyes were a little red. It's really not easy. Second miss is still alive. She's alive at home now. Li Nanheng didn't say much, but glanced at the window of Feng Ling's room. Mr. Li, I'll go in first. The weather has been cold recently, and it often rains. Don't stand outside. Don't catch a cold. Auntie Mai said with concern. Auntie Mai said with concern. Seeing Li Nanheng nod indifferently, she quickly turned around and returned to the villa. After returning to the room, she thought she could still talk to the second miss. But when she entered, she saw the two elders of the Feng family carefully close the bedroom door and quietly walk out. Second miss is asleep again? After all, Auntie Mai had hugged and coaxed the second miss every day and night when she was young. This relationship had long surpassed familial love. Of course, she wanted to talk to her now, but she didn't expect the bedroom door to be closed just like that. She immediately asked, "Sure." Matriarch Feng gestured to her. She had a fever last night, and only woke up for a few minutes. Her strength still can't hold on. After listening to me for a while, she fell asleep again. Let her sleep. Feng Ling was really asleep, and in the past 2 days after waking up, she hadn't recovered. She woke up and slept, and the time she slept was clearly much longer than when she was awake. In the past 2 days, the Feng family had really taken good care of her. Whether it was the two elders of the Feng family, or all the servants who could come into contact with Feng Ling, they all felt sorry for her and took good care of her. Their tone was filled with "Second miss, you're finally back." However, Feng Ling was in a daze. She couldn't respond to the concern of the people in the Feng family. At most, when the old lady came to talk to her, she would say a few words to her, and then fall asleep in exhaustion. After sleeping like this for 2 days, she woke up again and felt much better. At the same time, she heard 2 servants whispering by the bed. "He's still outside." "That's right. Auntie Mai and I went out to buy something earlier. When we came back, we saw that the car was still there. The 2 of them haven't driven it away. Didn't our madam call him in for dinner? But he didn't come in. He just waited outside. Could it be that he's really waiting for our second miss? What a coincidence. Second Miss Cenotaph is married to the Li family, and Mr. Li is deeply in love with our second Mississippi. Second miss doesn't say she wants to see him, but he's been waiting outside. There must be some story between the 2 of them." After hearing these words, Feng Ling just lay there quietly and did not speak. One of the servants saw that she had woken up and rushed over to ask her if she wanted to drink or eat. Feng Ling only blinked and remained silent. This time after she woke up, she did not fall asleep again. Even if she closed her eyes, she still could not fall asleep. The 2 servants thought she had fallen asleep and patiently guarded her, while continuing to chat quietly. They were mostly talking about Li Nanheng standing outside the Feng family for the past 2 days. After an unknown period of time, the servant suddenly got up to close the window. "It's raining again. Every year at this season, there will always be a few freezing rains. It's really cold." The servant was closing the window. When she looked out of the window, she suddenly paused and whispered in surprise, "Hey, why isn't Mr. Li in the car? It's already raining. Won't he catch a cold?" The 2 servants squeezed in front of the window and looked out. Sure enough, they saw the tall and straight figure standing by the car smoking, as though he was unaware of the sudden freezing rain. "If he gets drenched like this, he will catch a cold, right? Ask someone to send an umbrella to Mr. Li." "Yes, send a coat." "I don't think Mr. Li is wearing a coat. He seems to have left his coat here. The person inside hasn't recovered yet. If the person outside is also sick, what should we do?" "Don't quarrel. Second Miss and Mr. Li seem to be quite compatible." Sigh. "I don't know what happened. Seeing Mr. Li like this makes my heart ache." Howl monthly votes, please monthly votes. Hurry up and read the latest update. Chapter 1276. The two servants thought that Feng Ling had fallen asleep, so they did not continue to guard the room. Before leaving, they took her temperature again. After confirming that her temperature was normal, and there was no fever, they quietly left. Feng Ling opened her eyes, and looked at the luxurious crystal chandelier, and the spotless white ceiling. She heard the sound of the rain outside the window gradually getting heavier. The rain had been raining for a long time. Feng Ling closed her eyes and couldn't fall asleep. Of course, she was not feeling sorry for the people outside. Li Nanheng's physical fitness was very good. He wouldn't catch a cold or die just because of a freezing rain. She had nothing to feel sorry for or worry about. Even her current physical condition was due to her stomach bleeding, not eating for a few days, and being drenched in the rain. All of these factors added up together, causing her to collapse. Otherwise, she wouldn't have suddenly fallen so seriously ill. The Feng family people really gave Li Nanheng an umbrella and a coat. Li Nanheng did not accept it. He only thanked them and returned to the car, lest he kept causing trouble for them outside. Outside the car window, the rain was murmuring, and because it was too cold, a layer of white fog condensed on the car window. The man sat in the car and ignored the phone placed on the passenger seat. As if he did not hear it, he turned on the air conditioner in the car, lit a cigarette in his mouth, and then habitually glanced at the window of Feng Ling's room. This time, his gaze was fixed on the window, because this time, it was not just the window where the servants passed by, but Feng Ling. In just a few days, she had indeed lost a lot of weight. At some point, she got up from the bed and walked to the window alone. Even though they were separated by such a long distance, they could see each other clearly. Li Nanheng suddenly met Feng Ling's eyes, and quickly took out the cigarette in his mouth. Because he was too anxious, he did not even frown when the cigarette but burned him. He thought that she heard that he was outside, and was worried that he would get wet in the rain. So he quickly smiled in her direction, showing his goodwill, and not wanting to fall out with her. However, as soon as he smiled, Feng Ling expressionlessly closed the curtains, completely cutting off the only window that Li Nanheng could find comfort in for 2 days. Li Nanheng's smile froze. In the days after Feng Ling woke up, she quietly stayed in the bedroom and did not go out. Later, when she learned that Li Nanheng had been invited by grandfather Feng, the two of them chatted for a while before Li Nanheng left the Feng family, and did not continue to guard the door. She didn't know what they talked about, but Feng Ling didn't care. After adjusting her condition in the Feng family for a few days, she finally recovered a lot of energy and gradually accepted her role in the Feng family. At first, she only addressed them as Old Madam Feng and Old Mr. Feng. But gradually, because of the Feng family's enthusiasm and the atmosphere of the entire family's love for her, she gradually let go of her uncomfortable emotions and occasionally called them Grandpa and Grandma. The two elders of the Feng family were extremely excited. In the past few days, they had ordered one set of clothes after another for her. There were all kinds of styles, and they were all suitable for her size. They also bought a lot of necessities for her, and her room was almost full. Feng Ling had said several times that she didn't need to buy these things, but old Madame Feng always said that she owed her too much when she was young. Now that she had finally returned, if they didn't quickly think of a way to treat her well, the two of them would feel very uneasy. They were afraid that they didn't treat her well enough, and wanted to treat her better. After living for nearly 22 years, this was the first time Feng Ling had been loved and doted on by her so-called relatives. The two elders of the Feng family would come to talk to her every day. Feng Ling's parents died unjustly, and they did not mention Feng Mingzhu's matter when they sat together. After all, they knew that Feng Mingzhu was the one who did it. She had long been arrested by the police, but after all, she was a child of the Feng family. Although the two elders hated her, and would rather she plead guilty, they did not want to mention anything about Feng Mingzhu at home, to add to their troubles. In this large Feng family, it was as though only the tight embrace of the grandparents and granddaughter could warm up the Feng family, that seemed to be about to turn cold. As Feng Ling had been at home recently, she did not seem to have any intention of leaving, nor did she say that she would return to 11 base. Recently, When Grandfather Feng occasionally went to take care of various aspects of the family business, he looked energetic and in good spirits. Li Nanheng did not come again, but the elders of the Li family often came to the Feng family in their own names. They often sent various new collections of good things to the Feng family. Feng Ling usually avoided them and had no contact with the Li family. After returning for a month, Grandmother Feng was already used to Feng Ling being at home. She was no longer as afraid that she would suddenly disappear one day, but she was also used to sitting in Feng Ling's room and talking to her. What do you think about Nanheng's matter? Grandmother Feng looked at Feng Ling, who had already recovered a lot, and then at the white pajamas with lace on her body. She recalled Feng Ling's helpless gaze when she first wore these pajamas. Chapter 1277. It was the 5th month after Feng Ling returned to the Feng family. Almost everyone in 11 base lost contact with Feng Ling. She seemed to have suddenly disappeared from the world a few months ago. She changed her cell phone number and never came back. When everyone realized the problem, they inquired about it and learned that Feng Ling had been removed from the base and would not be able to come back with any position in the base in the future. From now on, she was only an outsider of 11 base. In the 8th month after Feng Ling returned to the Feng family, the Feng family moved to New York because the Feng family's business had shifted to New York. After leaving Los Angeles, only an old servant was left in the Feng family's villa to clean it occasionally. The others followed her to New York. From then on, there was no news of Feng Ling. During the Spring Festival, Old Master Li finally waited for Li Nanheng to return home. He hadn't been back for several months. Recently, he had been on several missions. Although he wasn't injured, he was obviously colder than before. When he blocked him at the door, Grandfather Li looked at him coldly. Do you still remember the bet you made with me? Li Nanheng had just returned from a mission. If it weren't for the Spring Festival, he would have returned to the base. Suddenly being called back by Grandfather Li, he just wanted to sleep and didn't want to say anything. However, he was suddenly blocked at the door by Grandfather Li. Li Nanheng's expression was cold. What bet? If you can't let me hold a great-grandson within a year, get back from the base obediently. Go back to the Li Corporation to manage the Li family's business for me, and hand the base to Ah Feng. Grandfather Li looked at him coldly. As a man, you must do what you say. How dare you say you forgot what you promised? Li Nanheng, I've already given you so much time. Don't talk about giving birth to a big fat great-grandson for me. You can't even see Feng Ling now. Isn't it time to fulfill your promise? Put down the matter of the base and hurry back to the Li Corporation. Li Nanheng looked at the determination in Grandfather Li's eyes and knew that he couldn't avoid it this time. But it was good. After he personally removed Feng Ling from the base, every time he returned to the base, he would look at the stamp he had stamped on that document. And every time he passed by all the places Feng Ling had been to in the base, his heart would ache. Since it was time to let it go, Ah Feng was one of them, so it was okay to hand it over to Ah Feng. It had been so many years. It was indeed time. The 2nd year after Feng Ling returned to the Feng family, she was brought into the Feng Corporation's family business by Grandfather Feng to study. However, because Feng Ling had not had much contact with this aspect since she was young, she discovered many problems after 2 months of study. After obtaining Feng Ling's consent, Grandfather Feng helped her apply to study in England for a year. Grandfather Feng had many familiar friends in England. He had a famous tutor in the financial world named Zand. He had helped him before, so he had asked Feng to go to Zand to help Feng Ling to England to study. In the beginning, Feng Ling only agreed. There was nothing to refuse. Since she was back, the Feng family really needed her to support this family after she gradually grew up. She had her own responsibilities, so she could accept any arrangement. In the end, she did not expect that Jean Wan's tutor in England was actually Mr. Zand. She had just arrived in England and had just found someone when she bumped into Jean Wan. However, Jean Wan had already been in England for 2 years, and her entire temperament had changed. Feng Ling did not mention much about herself in front of Jean Wan. She only said that she was here to study. Coincidentally, she was currently studying business management and various business and financial matters. Jin Wan's MN group was also lacking people, so Feng Ling decided to stay and study with them while working. It was just nice that she could accompany Jin Wan. When she first arrived in England, Jin Wan had been working overtime all day because in-group situation had fallen to a low point. Although Feng Ling had come to study, she was used to taking care of her, so she often stayed by her side to work with her. She often helped Jin Wan pour coffee and pack her things. Occasionally, she would act as Jin Wan's chauffeur and protect her just like when she was in High City. However, after all, she could not follow her around like before. Jin Wan was now the CEO of In Group, and it was not convenient for Feng Ling to follow her to many occasions. Feng Ling was worried about Jin Wan, so she simply asked Jin Wan to take some time out every day to learn some self-defense skills from her. Jin Wan was quite willing to learn. Every day, after working out, she would take an hour or two to learn various movements from Feng Ling in the gym. She would also learn from Feng Ling how to recognize the various acupuncture points in the human body. Feng Ling's days of studying in England, because of her company with Jin Wan, felt that the days passed very quickly. It was not as perfunctory and forced as she had imagined. She gradually adapted to the so-called struggle in the business world and In Group. She personally watched as Jin Wan single-handedly supported In Group. With Mr. Zan's guidance and help, she watched as In Group gradually gained a place in the global Chinese community. Not only did Jin Wan benefit a lot from Feng Ling, but Feng Ling also benefited a lot from Jin Wan. Half a year after coming to England, Jin Wan happened to be ranked first on the Forbes list of female entrepreneurs under the age of 25. Taking advantage of her rare vacation, Jin Wan and Feng Ling made an appointment to go to a riverside village on the outskirts of London for a 2-day vacation. At night, the two women sat by a riverside on the outskirts of London, drinking wine and eating barbecue. Jin Wan had just drunk 2 cans of wine. She lay on the grass and looked up at the sky, saying, "Feng Ling, if I had known that you would walk the path of a businessman in the future, when we were in T-City, I should have pressed your head down and made you learn obediently. I remember that you didn't even take those business management books." Feng Ling also held a glass of wine in her hand and sat by her side with a faint smile. "How could I know what would happen in the future? Besides, I was only responsible for protecting you. The bodyguard's job was to ensure your safety. I didn't have the mood to learn those things. Besides, the professor's words were too profound. A beginner like me couldn't learn anything from him." "That's true. The way the professor taught back then wasn't suitable for you," Jin Wan said with a smile. "Mr. Zand is different." Jin Wan said with a smile. "Mr. Zand is different. What he teaches is not limited to paper, but for you to do it yourself and experience it. Just like when MN Group fell to the bottom, he could have helped me, but he deliberately left me hanging and let me struggle to get up on my own. At most, he would occasionally give me a few pointers, but now that I think about it, he is indeed a good leader. He knows what to do and what not to do. After all, the future is your own. There are many things that you can only know how to do after experiencing it for yourself." 4M. It doesn't matter if you tie your hair up or let it down. Now that you're standing in front of me, I feel that you're indeed no longer the Feng Ling of the past. But if you keep your hair so short, I'll feel that you're still the same as before. Feng Ling didn't want to be like the past. She wanted to change. She indeed wanted to cut off all traces of her past, even if it was just a shadow that resembled her. Memories often made people think of many things. She didn't want to recall them. However, she didn't go to the barber shop outside to get her hair styled. Every day, she only wore a simple black baseball cap. Occasionally, her hair would be tied into a short ponytail, and occasionally, it would be scattered over her shoulders. She only wore a hat. She was still used to wearing sportswear because she felt comfortable and didn't feel restrained. However, Mr. Zand had specially said something about her usual dressing. He said that the British business world paid a lot of attention to etiquette. For some important signing occasions and business contacts, she had to wear formal clothes or gowns. It was not advisable for her to always dress like a student or a gym coach. After being pointed out by Mr. Zan several times, Feng Ling still had no intention of changing her mind. On the other hand, Xiaoba and Jin Wan were anxious for her. MN Group was prospering by the day. Although Jin Wan was busy, she was not as tired as she had been in the past few months. It was rare for her to find time, so she and Xiaoba tricked Feng Ling to a certain commercial street in London and brought her into a department store. It was one thing for Jin Wan, but Jin Wan also brought Xiaoba along. Of the two of them, one was paying attention, and the other kept chatting by the side. Feng Ling looked at the clothes they had chosen for her and felt her head hurt. This dress isn't bad. It's a very plain style on the top, and there are some pleated designs on the bottom. It should be very smooth on your body. Jin Wan picked up a pearl-colored dress and raised it to Feng Ling. She waved it in front of Feng Ling. After making sure that Feng Ling's skin could handle any color, she stuck the dress to her body and said with great satisfaction, "Beautiful. This is very beautiful. Feng Ling, try it on quickly." Jin Wan. Feng Ling was helpless. She raised her hand and was about to push the clothes away when Jin Wan forcefully pressed the dress against her body and stared at her. "Don't you remember what I said? And what did Mr. Zan say about you? Have you forgotten that even if you don't like to wear it, you have to have a few pieces? Otherwise, when it comes to certain occasions, do you still want to borrow my clothes? I can borrow them, but our sizes are different. It won't be comfortable for you to wear them." Without waiting for Feng Ling to speak, Jin Wan turned back and asked the shop assistant to lead the way for Feng Ling to the fitting room. Feng Ling was helpless. She took the clothes into the fitting room. It wasn't that she had never worn dresses before. In the past, when she was in the base, she had worn them when she was dressed as a woman. They were sexier and tighter than this kind of clothes. At that time, she was not used to wearing them, but she had no choice but to wear them. Now she was suddenly asked to change her style. In fact, the baseball cap and sportswear were really comfortable. She stood in the fitting room and looked at herself in the floor-to-ceiling mirror. She then looked at the pearl-colored dress in her hand. Xiaoba stood outside and urged, "Feng Ling, don't waste time. CEO Ji specially took time out today to accompany you shopping for clothes. Her time is so precious right now, and she's still thinking about you. You should give her some face and quickly change your clothes." Feng Ling. A few minutes later, the door of the fitting room opened. The moment she saw Feng Ling walk out, Xiaoba, who was waiting for her outside and drinking milk tea, almost splashed the milk tea all over herself. W4M. Chapter 1279. The hat on Feng Ling's head had been taken off by herself. Her black hair, which had never been dyed, was scattered softly on her shoulders, and there were still some bangs on her forehead. She was wearing the high heels used in the fitting room to change clothes, and her sportswear had turned into a pearl-colored dress. Seeing Feng Ling come out, Xiaoba stood there for a long time before suddenly shouting, COG! Come and see, come and see! A fairy has descended to the world, Feng Ling was already feeling uncomfortable. Hearing Xiaoba's shout, her face instantly turned thin. She turned around and rushed back to the fitting room to change her clothes. At this time, Jin Wan happened to come over. "Hey, why are you hiding?" With that, she rushed over. "You're really beautiful. Stand properly. Let me see if you need any other accessories." Feng Ling was suddenly pulled by Jin Wan and had to turn around. She was beautiful, but it was too exaggerated to say that a fairy had descended to the world. Xiaoba's character was very lively, especially when she knew that Feng Ling was embarrassed. So she deliberately wanted to praise her, but she accidentally couldn't hold back, and said a little exaggeratedly. Fortunately, Jin Wan appeared in time. Feng Ling was tall. Although she was thin, her figure was perfect. Wearing such a dress and high heels, she didn't need to dress up at all. She looked very fresh and eye-catching. It was not an exaggeration to say that she was beautiful. The size of this one is also very suitable. Jinwan looked at the size of the dress she was wearing and said, "In the future, buy clothes in this size. It's just right to wear. Don't always wear those loose sportswear and t-shirts. Buy a few more here today, and bring them back. In the future, remember to wear them when you come to work in MN. Don't wear those sportswear anymore." Feng Ling, wear it at work? Jinwan raised her eyebrows and gently stroked the material of the dress on her shoulders. "Yes, I'm the boss. After all, you're studying and working in our MN group. I created a learning and working environment for you. You should listen to me, shouldn't you?" Feng Ling, "I really didn't ask anything of you," Jinwan said seriously. "It's about time to mention that the clothes I bought for you today, you have to wear them for at least 3 days a week, and then you can wear them as you see fit for the other 4 days." In short, he had to change Feng Ling's dressing habits step by step, but he couldn't rush it. Wearing a skirt 3 days a week was not too much. After that, Jinwan continued to take Feng Ling and Xiaoba shopping in the mall. After spending 4 to 5 hours, she helped Feng Ling choose many sets of clothes. There were some single-piece tops and some well-designed pants. There were also some beautiful suits, some dresses, and some beautiful dresses that were separated and matched together. In short, he bought almost all the fashionable and OL-style clothes and asked Feng Ling to bring them back to wear. Jinwan also chose 2 sets of clothes for Xiaoba. Xiaoba was overjoyed. At night, even though she had been out for a day, Feng Ling still came to Jinwan at her regular fitness time and taught her the simple martial arts and movements for self-defense. During the day, Jinwan's fighting ability in the mall could not be underestimated, but after returning home, she became useless. Originally, she wanted to lie on the bed and laze around, but she was still cruelly pulled up from the bed by Feng Ling and forced to exercise in the fitness room. "Feng Ling, you haven't returned to the base for training for so long. Why is your stamina still so good? Aren't you tired after walking out for a day?" Jinwan asked helplessly as she walked on the treadmill. "I wore flat shoes during the day, not high heels. I'm not tired. I'm also wearing flat shoes." Jinwan let out a long breath and tried to cheer herself up to continue walking quickly. Feng Ling was thinking about Jinwan's health. After Jinwan had a miscarriage in Los Angeles, she was depressed for a long time and didn't sit well during the month of confinement. Her physical condition deteriorated every day. If she took the time to exercise well now, her physical condition would be much better. In the 2 years since Jinwan arrived in England, other than when she was too busy, her life had been very regular and rational. She and Feng Ling had the same tacit understanding. That was, Jinwan did not mention a word about Mo Jingxian, and Feng Ling did not say a word about Li Nanheng. "Walk for another 20 minutes, and then do the movements I taught you last night. Review them and learn the new movements next time." Although Feng Ling was teaching Jinwan by the side, she still accompanied her to practice. She turned on another treadmill by the side and maintained the same rhythm as Jinwan. 2 hours later, Jinwan was so tired that she sat on the sofa to drink water. After drinking a large glass of water, she leaned against the sofa weakly and looked at Feng Ling, who did not sit down but put on a baseball cap and coat to go home. "By the way, there's something I almost forgot to tell you." "What is it?" Feng Ling was indeed preparing to go home. Hearing this, she turned back to look at her. "Do you remember Mr. Zan's younger brother, who is the vice president of the London International Bank? That time when we went to UNL with Mr. Zand, we coincidentally met the young, fair, and gentle-looking one." Feng Ling recalled briefly. "I don't remember." "Jinwan." "That's right." Feng Ling was the type who did not like to take strangers to heart. After seeing him for a few days, she probably forgot about him and did not take it seriously. "TSK, then I'm afraid his love is unrequited. I met him again 2 days ago, but I met him at a financing meeting in London. After all, he's the vice president of the London International Bank. He's very knowledgeable in financial investment. Many companies here find it difficult to speak to him, let alone ask for financing. But perhaps because we're Mr. Zan's subordinates, he's quite polite to us. More importantly, we've only met once before. I remember that he was especially cold to us and didn't even bother to ask for our names. But he remembers and specially asked why you didn't go with me. Jinwan smiled and leaned against the sofa. I met him again 2 days ago, but at a financing meeting in London. Feng Ling looked at Jinwan. So, based on a woman's sixth sense, I feel that he seems to be interested in you. Feng Ling did not have much expression. If there's nothing else, I'll go back first. AI, why are you leaving? I don't think he has any feelings for Li Nanheng right now. He doesn't even plan to return to 11 base. Could it be that he plans to be alone for the rest of his life? I think Mr. Zan's brother has a good character and looks. Most importantly, he is gentle and gentlemanly. If there is a chance to develop well. Chapter 1280. Think about yourself first. Feng Ling did not wait for Jinwan to finish speaking. She interrupted her and turned to leave. Jinwan. Feng Ling had just walked out of the door when Xiaoba came back. The moment she saw Feng Ling, she knew that she must have tortured Jinwan in the gym. Xiaoba was especially afraid that one day, Feng Ling would drag her into Jinwan's gym to train. She immediately grinned at her with a fearful expression. Hee goddess, you're going home already? Aren't you staying for a meal? Xiaoba was Jinwan's fan, and Jinwan was also Xiaoba's life goal. However, Feng Ling had always been Xiaoba's goddess. She was the kind of goddess who was unreachable. Feng Ling glanced at her indifferently. It's fine if you stay for a meal. It's fine if you stay to teach me a set of boxing moves. Xiaoba. She immediately made an inviting gesture. Please go home. Feng Ling snorted, but a smile appeared in her eyes. She liked the way she interacted with Jinwan and Xiaoba. It was very relaxing. She could be herself casually, and did not need to be too restrained. After leaving Jinwan's residence, Feng Ling did not go home directly. She had just received a call from Mr. Zand asking her to go over to get some documents. Mr. Zand's private villa. As soon as Feng Ling arrived, she saw a limited edition blue Bugatti parked in the villa. She didn't remember Mr. Zand having this car in his garage. Could it be a new car? However, this car was completely different from Mr. Zand's usual steady and shrewd personality. It seemed to be driven by a younger person. Feng Ling only took a glance and walked in. When she entered, she saw 2 cups of coffee on the coffee table in the villa. She usually didn't drink coffee, so the coffee was clearly not for her. It seemed like there were other guests here. Miss Feng, you're here. Fei Yong walked over and said, Mr. Zand and Mr. Ian are chatting in the study. They'll be out soon. Please wait a moment. Feng Ling nodded. Ian was the vice president of the London International Bank that Jinwan mentioned. He was of British and Chinese descent. He seemed to be around 32 or 33 years old. She didn't know much about him. She had only heard Mr. Zand mention this younger brother. He wasn't his biological brother, but seemed to be the younger brother of a cousin. After all, Mr. Zand was of pure British descent, but Ian was half Chinese. Therefore, Mr. Ian spoke Chinese more fluently than Mr. Vincent, and it was more convenient for them to communicate. Feng Ling really didn't have much interaction with Mr. Zand's younger brother. She had only met him once or twice, because of the relationship between Jinwan and Mr. Zand. When they were talking together, she would sit by the side and listen while learning. Right now she was in a state of observing and learning. She still had to follow Jinwan, but fortunately Jinwan was around. She told her everything about business without hiding anything. She would also patiently explain all the ways to communicate with businessmen to her in detail. Thus, Feng Ling had indeed improved greatly. She could already negotiate contracts and meet clients alone, and she could successfully earn a lot of money based on her own judgment. The Filipino maid went to pour Feng Ling a glass of apple juice. After thanking her, Feng Ling stood in front of the window in the living room. She held the apple juice while looking at the garden scenery in the front yard of the villa. Mr. Zand's front yard and backyard were decorated very well. Most of them were green plants, and the air was good and fresh. After waiting for less than 10 minutes, Feng Ling heard someone laughing and chatting behind her. Then she heard footsteps coming down the stairs. She turned back and saw Mr. Zand and Mr. Ian walking down with a smile. "You're here?" When Mr. Zand saw Feng Ling, he waved at her. "Come here. I've printed out the documents I mentioned last time. Take them back and tidy them up. Take a good look." Feng Ling walked over and took a stack of documents. They were all English words and numbers. She could understand them. After all, she had grown up in the United States. She nodded. "All right, apart from these typical business cases, do you need me to look at any other financial cases? Read these first. Write a summary for me later." Feng Ling's expression instantly stiffened. Her face was filled with disbelief. "You want to write a summary? Why else do you think I asked you to read these?" Mr. Zand smiled. "Grandpa gave it to me to teach you how to be a smart businessman. You have no foundation to begin with. From one industry to this industry, what you should absorb is not from books, but all the experiences you have learned. In the past half a year in England, you've seen and heard a lot. Now it's time to work hard on these cases. I asked you to write a summary to see how much you've absorbed. There's no need to write too detailed. Just write what you want to express." Feng Ling. "All right, I understand." She placed the documents into the bag she had brought with her and carefully put them away. Ian stood by the side and did not speak, but he did not leave. He only looked at Feng Ling for a while. Mr. Zand usually did not speak much, nor was he someone who dawdled. After giving his instructions, he asked Feng Ling to go back. However, as he spoke, he felt that his brother's eyes seemed to be staring at her, so he turned to glance at him. "What's wrong? Are you interested in my student?" A scrutinizing smile appeared on Ian's handsome face. "I'm just very curious about this Miss Feng. She's clearly a very beautiful lady, but why does she always have a straight face all day? Furthermore, she doesn't seem to have a good temper. The first 2 times I met her, it wasn't very pleasant, but I have a deep impression of her." Feng Ling replied calmly, "I'm sorry. I've always been like this since I was young. I don't mean to offend anyone. If I accidentally offend Mr. Ian, please don't hold it against me on account that Mr. Zand is my mentor." "Ha ha ha." Ian laughed. No, Miss Feng, you don't have to be so polite. You didn't offend me." Mr. Zand raised his brows and gave Ian a meaningful look. Ian also gave him a look, indicating that he was indeed interested in his student. Mr. Zand sneered without giving him any face. "This female student of mine is not so easy to conquer. Be careful." The conversation between the 2 men was too direct. It was not like Feng Ling did not understand. She did not speak or participate in this topic. She only took the documents with a calm and indifferent expression and left. "I'll go back first. I'll get someone to send you," Mr. Zand said. After saying that, he glanced at Ian. Of course, the person he wanted to call was his younger brother. He had to have some awareness of being a grown man. "No need. I drove here myself." Feng Ling did not look back. Chapter 1281. Feng Ling walked out of the villa. The person behind her did not chase after her. She could be considered happy and quiet. After entering the car, she placed the documents in her hands on the passenger seat and drove back. She drove home, showered, and dried her hair before reading the documents. The night passed just like that. The next day, she continued to work at Jinwan's company. Mr. Zand rarely came to Jinwan's place. Even though he was old, he was completely a respectable elder. However, he seemed to be very concerned about being too close to Jinwan. Although Mr. Mo and Jinwan had not contacted each other for more than 2 years, Feng Ling often felt that Mr. Zand had been maintaining a certain distance from Jinwan due to the pressure from Mo Jingshan, afraid that there would be any misunderstandings. Of course, this could only be a guess. After all, they had already divorced and no longer contacted each other. It was Mr. Mo who had brought up the divorce. How could he possibly give others pressure? Jinwan's personality was very tough. Although she did not say it out loud, she would usually be as happy as she was with everyone. When she was alone at night, she would not feel sad or anything. However, Feng Ling knew that Jinwan's personality had subtly changed a lot. Both of them had changed a lot. Jinwan was forcefully pushed out from a warm embrace, while Feng Ling, it was hard to explain. The two of them felt more like bosom friends in a foreign country, so their relationship became better and better. It was the weekend, and it was a holiday. It was rare for Jinwan and Xiaoba to rest at home. As they were afraid that Feng Ling would drag them out of bed to go to the gym, they decided to mercilessly reject Feng Ling outside the door. Feng Ling decided to read and learn alone at home. After staying at home for the entire morning, she recalled that Mr. Zand had introduced a book to her. Last week, when she went to buy it, she did not manage to buy it. He said that it would arrive in a week. She changed her clothes and headed out. The bookstore she was going to was about a 15-minute drive from her residence. After arriving, she directly entered the bookstore to find the book. This bookstore was on the first floor of a department store. It was connected from the inside to the outside, and people often used it as a side door to enter. So there were all kinds of people coming in and out. Today was the weekend, so there were a lot of people coming in and out. Feng Ling was walking past the business and finance books area. She picked up a book and flipped through it. After reading for a while, she turned to continue looking. Suddenly, she found a book that she had never seen before, but the content inside was very interesting. It was also related to finance and business, but the author's expression was very humorous. As she read, she was quickly attracted. She would not feel sleepy, nor would she feel like she was learning. Instead, it was as if she had learned a lot of various cases from a short story. Feng Ling was fascinated by it. She stood there with her head lowered and kept flipping through it seriously. Suddenly, a scream came from a place about 10 meters behind her. Ah! At first, Feng Ling ignored them, but then she heard the people behind her fleeing in panic. Tokyo Bandits. It's the Tokyo Bandits. There were often gun murders in Western countries and major cities. The Tokyo Bandits, as the name suggested, were a robbery force formed by a few Japanese martial artists. They all had guns in their hands and were skilled. They had been committing crimes in England. The last time she heard of them killing and robbing was more than 2 months ago. At that time they robbed a gold shop. The money and gold inside were enough for them to live for a long time. It seemed like they were short of money again. They actually dared to appear in the business center of London. Listening to the noise and screams behind her, Feng Ling's expression did not change. She continued to read the book in her hand as though she had heard nothing. She frowned unhappily because the screams behind her affected her mood. Bang! One of the bandits suddenly fired a shot at the light above the bookstore. In an instant, the lampshade shattered and scattered on the ground. Hearing the gunshot, the people shouted even more excitedly. But it seemed like the Tokyo Bandits were guarding the front and back doors. In the end, no one was able to escape. All of them shrank their necks in fear and hid inside. In the end, there were more people squeezing in. Feng Ling didn't know who bumped into her, but she closed the book in her hand expressionlessly. The group of people were panicking. Only a woman standing there with her back to them with a book in her hand did not seem to be in a hurry. A few of the Tokyo Bandits saw her at a glance. Is that person deaf? Can't you hear the gunshot? I think he's deaf. A normal person would have been scared silly. Look at how many people are here. 1, 2, 3. Tiske. More than 20 people are all scared like dead dogs, haha. After that, the Tokyo Bandits shouted at the crowd in Chinese. Don't move. Otherwise I'll kill you now. Hand over all the valuables you have. Hearing that the Tokyo Bandits were shouting in Chinese, the British people present were all in disbelief. Why were they Chinese? Were these people not Tokyo Bandits? Could it be that Chinese were robbing them? Feng Ling's fingers quietly stroked the edges of the book, her back facing the Tokyo Bandits. They were all Asian. They were doing illegal things in a foreign country and pretending to be Chinese. They were really filthy to the extreme. That woman hasn't reacted yet. She's either scared or she hasn't heard anything. Go get her over here and start with her. One of the Tokyo Bandits, who was probably at the level of a big brother, suddenly lowered his voice and instructed the person beside him. Then someone suddenly walked quickly toward Feng Ling. Seeing the man coming over with a gun, the people who had been hiding around Feng Ling scattered in fright. In the end, Feng Ling, who couldn't hear the situation, was left alone. Seeing the man approaching her with a fierce expression, some people in the crowd looked at her pitifully, feeling that this young girl might be about to be splattered with blood on the spot. The moment the man approached with a gun and pressed it against Feng Ling's waist, everyone in the bookstore held their breath in fright. Some timid women screamed in fright and quickly covered their ears with their hands. At the same time, they closed their eyes. However, to everyone's surprise, when the young girl suddenly felt the gun behind her, she did not panic at all. Instead, she slowly and calmly stuffed the book in her hand back into the bookshelf as though nothing had happened. Then, she slowly turned her head and coldly looked at the ferocious Tokyo bandits behind her. Moi, don't be anxious. Feng Ling is working hard to evolve, asking for monthly votes. Chapter 1282. The Tokyo bandits immediately shouted something behind Feng Ling. It sounded like Chinese, but it also sounded like Japanese. When mixed together, it became a language that no one else could understand. However, they believed that not many people present could understand it. They just treated it as Chinese, so they immediately shouted a few more words. In between, there were a few words that could be understood. For example, they shouted in Chinese, "Do you want to live? Grandpa can let you live. Give me money. Don't pretend to be deaf and dumb." Feng Ling looked indifferently at the man holding the gun behind her. She suddenly curved her lips and said in a low voice. Although her voice was low, it was not that no one present could understand Chinese. In big cities and bustling streets like foreign countries, it was common to see Chinese people. One or two people heard her curse in Chinese. She scolded the Tokyo bandits for being an island tribe, and they immediately looked in her direction in surprise. However, the Tokyo bandits did not understand. He stared at her in confusion and asked in his not fluent Chinese, "Are you from China?" Feng Ling smiled lightly. Her smile looked harmless, especially now that she had long hair, and was wearing one of the clothes that Jinwan had forced her to buy some time ago. She looked very girlish, making people feel that she was just a weak young girl. She didn't answer but said word by word clearly, "You don't even know how to speak decent Chinese. A few barbarians from an island country dare to pretend to be your ancestors from thousands of years ago. Chinese people use knives and guns to kill enemies. They're not the same as you little Japanese people who kill themselves in front of the Emperor of Japan. Be careful." The Tokyo bandits didn't quite understand her words, but they could tell that she wasn't afraid of them at all. They immediately looked in her direction coldly. Seeing that the attention of many people in the bookstore was attracted by the young girl, the people closest to the front and back doors began to try to sneak out. However, just as they were about to escape, they were stopped. The gunshot rang out again. In an instant, screams rang out everywhere. In this chaotic moment, Feng Ling's hand suddenly grabbed the gun against her waist. She snatched the gun with one hand before the person behind her could react. With the other hand, she grabbed a transparent glass bottle with a green basket on top of the bookshelf and smashed it against the head of another person slightly closer to her. The moment that person was hit, she kicked the person behind him and rushed over nimbly. She snatched the gun from the person who had just been hit by the glass bottle. With two guns in her hands, she didn't have to worry about running out of bullets. She forcefully turned the gun in her hand and coldly fired a shot at the two people who were groaning in pain on the ground. She looked at them expressionlessly and coldly. In the end, the two of them did not dare to stop her. Under her gaze, they quickly looked away, turned around, and quickly ran in to help their accomplices up and escape. Feng Ling ignored what was happening behind her. No matter how the London police dealt with it, it had nothing to do with her. After all, her actions were only self-defense, and she did not kill anyone. The few of them were in a mess, and it was enough for the police to be busy. No one would take the time to pester her. However, as soon as she walked into the mall, she wanted to find a door that led to the outside and leave quickly. She did not plan to waste time here. She still had to go to the bookstore. However, she did not expect to suddenly run into Mr. Ian, who had appeared out of nowhere. Their eyes met. Ian's gaze was like a torch landing on her body. At the same time, he saw a trace of blood on her wrist. Feng Ling's back was indeed good. But those people had a lot of weapons in their hands. One of them was carrying a knife. Although he was cut down by her in the end, his wrist was still cut in the snatching. Chapter 1283. Although it was only a superficial wound, and did not bleed much, Feng Ling felt a little uncomfortable being seen by a stranger like this. In the past 6 months, she had never fought with anyone in England. When she was by Jin Wan's side, she could only intimidate her. After all, MN Group also had security guards and professional bodyguards. Feng Ling was here to learn. Jin Wan didn't really want her to bother protecting her, so Feng Ling basically didn't fight much. Today was the first time she had fought since she came to England. In the end, it caused such a big commotion. She only looked at Ian for a moment, and left without saying anything. However, the tall mixed-race man strode over without saying a word. The moment Feng Ling turned around and took a few steps, he suddenly grabbed her wrist. Although he avoided the wound on her wrist, he held it tightly. "You're injured. I'll take you to bandage it." Although Feng Ling had been in 11 base for many years, and didn't feel much from her brothers, this man was different from her previous brothers. She was so sensitive that she wanted to pull her hand out, but the man held it even tighter. She frowned. "Let go." Ian lowered his eyes to look at her. "I said you're injured and need to bandage it. It's just a small injury. Just buy a band-aid." Feng Ling turned to look at him. "Mr. Ian, please let go of my hand. I'm not as open-minded as you British. It's not polite to hold someone's wrist in public." Ian retracted his hand and glanced at her again. Then he turned to look at the bookstore that was surrounded by the London police. "I passed by and didn't know what happened inside, but I suddenly saw you kick someone down." Feng Ling. He lowered his eyes to look at her. "I didn't know that apart from your bad temper, you're actually so powerful. Even a few men with guns can't beat you. Miss Feng, I really can't help but be curious. What's your background?" Feng Ling was silent for a moment. Mr. Zand only knew that she was the second daughter of the Feng family, who had lost and recovered. He knew that she had grown up in a military base, so her personality was a little tough. This was Mr. Zand's understanding of her. Ian definitely did not know much about her. She didn't want to answer, and just walked away. Ian couldn't remember how many times he had seen this little woman's stubborn and indifferent back. The distance she maintained in front of others made people feel the weakness and untouchability hidden in her heart. He looked at her, and said a few words to the secretary behind him. He told the secretary to talk about the department store today, then turned around and walked out. Feng Ling returned to the car, and placed her hand on the steering wheel. Only then did she see that although the wound on her wrist was not big, it was quite deep. No wonder Ian saw it. The blood had rubbed against her clothes. She was wearing a light-colored set today, and there was a large patch of blood on her leg. It wasn't that he couldn't feel the pain. It was just that he had gotten used to being injured all over his body over the years. On the contrary, he hadn't been injured much recently, so the sudden pain really stung him. She felt that her hands were not steady when holding the steering wheel. She was about to find a wet towel in the car to wipe the blood off her wrist, when the door to the front passenger seat suddenly opened. Ian opened the door and sat in without saying a word. Feng Ling paused and stared at him. "What are you doing? How can I drive with my hand injured like this?" Ian crossed his fingers and casually placed them on his lap. He turned to look at her. "I don't have anything to do today. Since you're my brother's student, I'll send you to the hospital." Feng Ling's gaze was cold. "No need. Please get out of the car." Ian had no intention of leaving, nor did he speak. He just looked at her indifferently. It seemed that a successful person like Ian, especially in his 30s, was not as young as Qiao Fei and Chen Beiqing she had met in the past. This kind of man was not easy to deal with, especially when he made a decision. Furthermore, he was the vice president of the bank. He had so many subordinates under him, and he was used to giving orders. This kind of aura was not easy to push away. Feng Ling knew that this kind of person was not easy to deal with. She was not in the mood to deal with him. She frowned and said, Mr. Ian, are you British so rude to get into someone else's car without being invited? Don't say we're British. Half of my blood is Chinese. Ian looked at her indifferently. Miss Feng, I'm concerned about you. Thank you for your concern, but I don't need it. Feng Ling's expression remained cold. I'm warning you one last time. Please get out of the car. Ian smiled and raised his hand to make an inviting gesture. If you can drive the car 500 meters away smoothly, I'll get out. Feng Ling took a deep breath and expressionlessly retracted her gaze. She started the engine and drove the car away. It was just that her wrist was a little painful, but it was not to the extent that she could not drive. However, after driving for about 500 meters, she subconsciously wanted to stop the car and let him get out. However, she neglected the situation at the nearby intersection. After driving here, she was not allowed to stop. Even if she wanted to violate the traffic laws, she could not stop at all. There were many cars behind, and a slight delay would cause a serious traffic jam. Seeing that the car could not be stopped, Feng Ling's expression became even worse. As she drove, she said coldly, Mr. Ian, you're so scheming. Ian smiled calmly and pointed ahead with his chin. There's a hospital 3 kilometers ahead. Go and bandage it. I'll leave after seeing that your wrist is bandaged. Feng Ling couldn't stop the car right now, so she had no other choice but to drive forward. However, when she drove to the hospital, she unbuckled her seatbelt and said, Are you sending me to the hospital, or should I send you to the hospital? Ian chuckled. It's the same meaning. Can't you drive? If you like to drive by yourself, I'll let you. However, I still have to watch you bandage it. Otherwise, I don't think you take your body seriously. It's very likely that you'll go back directly. If you get infected by the water and have a fever after the infection, I'm afraid no one will see you faint at home at night. It's not that serious. I can see if it's serious. AI could push the car away. Let's go bandage it. Chapter 1284. This person's back view was too similar to that of the man in Los Angeles. She retracted her cold gaze, took out the electronic car key, locked the car door, and followed him into the hospital. It was just a very simple skin wound. After the doctor stopped the bleeding and disinfected it, he wrapped it with gauze. Originally, there was no need to wrap the gauze, but Ian insisted. In the end, because her wrist was tied up, when she walked out of the hospital, she looked in the direction of her car and realized that this man was really scheming. She really couldn't drive anymore. I'll help you drive the car back. Where do you live? Ian walked by her side and signaled her with his eyes to give her the car key. Feng Ling was not someone who liked to compromise, especially when she was facing a man who knew how to play tricks. At this moment, her phone rang. She picked up her phone and answered the call. Hello, Xiaoba. And no, I'm not home. I'm in the hospital now. It's fine. I encountered something just now. There's a scratch on my wrist. I came to the hospital to deal with it. There's no need to tell Jean Wan. The company has been so busy recently. It's not easy for her to have a good weekend. Don't let her worry. And you can come over if you want. Help me drive the car back. All right, I'll send you the location later. Feng Ling hung up the phone and turned to look at Ian. Sorry, my friend will be here soon. She can send me back. She can also drive the car for me. Thank you, Mr. Ian. Ian raised his brows slightly. Why do you always guard against me, as if you're guarding against a thief? Do I have ulterior motives toward you or something? No, you're thinking too much. I'm just not used to being too close to strangers. I've seen you a few times. You're still a stranger? Are we very familiar with each other? Feng Ling asked. Seeing that she didn't give him any space to take advantage of, Ian had met countless scheming and shrewd women at his age, but he had never seen such a stubborn woman. The key was that when she could clearly see that he was interested in her, she kept him at a distance of 1,000 miles. If this was her way of seducing men, he could only congratulate her on her success. However, she didn't do it on purpose. She really didn't want to have anything to do with him. All right, I won't argue with you. Ian glanced at her car. I'll accompany you to the car and wait. I'll leave when your friend comes. Feng Ling did not say anything and walked toward her car. No matter what, Ian had arranged for her to go to the hospital. He had also asked someone to quickly call a doctor to bandage her wound, so that she wouldn't have to wait in line. He still had to be courteous at the end. After returning to the car, Feng Ling sat in the driver's seat, picked up her coat, and put it on. The sleeve of the coat was just enough to cover the white gauze on her wrist. Then she picked up her phone and kept looking at it, ignoring the man sitting in the passenger seat. In the end, the phone was suddenly taken away from her hand. She looked at the empty phone and turned to see Ian holding her phone smoothly and calling his own phone. Feng Ling watched him. What are you doing? Give me your number. In the future, we'll know each other and no longer be strangers. Ian was very direct. After obtaining her phone number, he did not do anything else. Before she flew into a rage, he handed the phone back to her. Don't worry, I'm also very busy. I don't have so much time to disturb you. But since we're both single, it shouldn't be too much to contact each other when we're not busy. It doesn't violate any moral standards. You can be uninterested in me, but it doesn't stop me from being interested in you. There's still a long way to go. Feng Ling reached out and snatched her phone. Seeing that he had saved her phone number into his address book, she was clearly unhappy. You're not being polite. If I'm too polite, I won't be able to chase after the woman I like. Were all men so shameless when chasing after women nowadays? Sure enough, only the cold and aloof Mr. Mo was the most pleasing to the eye. Back then, other than being good to Jinwan, his attitude towards everyone else was so cold, as though they were worlds apart. He would never do anything to make things difficult for others. Even when it came to Jinwan, he treated her with sincerity. He would never play such a messy trick. She did not speak anymore, and did not want to communicate with this person. She just looked at the time on her phone impatiently, waiting for Xiaoba to come over. At this moment, the man beside her suddenly reached out his arm and leaned closer. When Feng Ling turned to look at him, the man had already placed one hand on the steering wheel in front of her, and the other on the seat behind her. Although he did not pull the distance too close, his action of imprisoning her in the driver's seat still made Feng Ling's eyelids twitch. How deeply hurt are you to hide your heart so well? Ian looked into her eyes. You're young. You shouldn't be so dull. Feng Ling looked away expressionlessly, and could not be bothered to answer. Los Angeles, America. Li Corporation. CEO Li. The secretary Yu Zheng knocked on the door and entered the CEO's office. He walked in with a few meeting documents in his hand. When the man walked in, he was actually a little nervous. After all, Li Nanheng had been back to take over the Li Corporation for a few months. Although he was swift and decisive, he had made the company look like he had changed a layer of skin, and the whole company had entered a state of slow improvement. In the past 6 months, the Li Corporation had been in the best state in recent years, but CEO Li was good at everything, except for his temper. Furthermore, his temper was extremely bad. Chapter 1285. From the beginning, the words were clearly written on CEO Li's face. I'm not in a good mood right now. After the meeting was suspended, everyone heaved a sigh of relief and quickly returned to their respective posts to avoid being affected. After all, if CEO Li was really ruthless, he could fire all the heads of several departments at the same time. Half a year ago, when he first took over the Li Corporation, he had changed the blood of these people. It was not impossible now. Everyone avoided him as much as they could. After all, CEO Li's expression when he looked at his phone was frighteningly bad. Yu Zheng was unlucky. As a secretary, he had to bite the bullet and come to deliver the meeting documents. CEO Li. After Yu Zheng put down the document, he saw Li Nanheng sitting on the leather chair behind the desk. He leaned against it and did not speak. His expression was still cold. He did not continue to look at his phone, but he was holding it in his hand. It looked like he was about to crush it on the spot. After hesitating for a moment, he tried his best to speak in a voice that was filled with a strong desire to live. This is the information from the meeting just now. Although the meeting was only half done, the information that was sorted out, and the summary of the various departments that need to be submitted, have also been summarized. Please take a look. Li Nanheng glanced at the document that was suddenly put down on the table. His cold eyes gradually regained some focus. Do you need me to go to England recently? Or can you arrange for me to go on a business trip to England? England? Yu Zheng was startled for a moment. He did not understand why he suddenly wanted to go to England, but he still seriously picked up the tablet and checked it for a while before answering. CEO Li, you don't have any plans to go to England recently. Instead, you have a lot of things to do in Washington, Los Angeles, and New York. Recently, the cooperation with the Li Corporation has been expanding better and better. There are more and more occasions that require you to appear personally. These are all things that you have to go personally. As for England, Yu Zheng looked at the last few pages on the tablet. Oh, in 3 months, there will be an exhibition in Los Angeles with the British Diplomatic Corps. This was just decided not long ago, but the people from England are coming, not you. Li Nanheng rubbed his brows. Arrange something for me to do in England? Yu Zheng was really dumbfounded. The Li Corporation did not have much contact with the companies in England, and there were not many activities that required Li Nanheng to personally go to England. However, CEO Li had personally spoken, so he probably had something to do in England. President Li, do you know Emin Group in London? Yu Zheng asked. Li Nanheng frowned and glanced at him. I know. What happened to Emin Group? We have a cooperation document sent by Emin Group when it was just a small studio. At that time, it was suppressed and never brought to the table. Now that the small studio has transformed into Emin Group, its strength cannot be underestimated. Now we can take out this cooperation document and take a closer look. If we can really cooperate, perhaps CEO Li, you really need to go to England in person. Jin Wan's previous studio had sent a cooperation application to the Li Corporation. It was probably because he hadn't returned to the Li Group yet. Otherwise, if he were here, if he refused Jin Wan's studio's request, Mo Jingshan would be the first to make trouble for him. Give it to me, let me have a look. All right. Yu Zheng quickly called the secretary's office to find the cooperation application document. The secretary's office was very efficient, especially when they heard that CEO Li wanted to see it. 10 minutes later, there was a knock on the door of the CEO's office. Another secretary came in to deliver the document. Yu Zheng took it, opened the bag on the document, sorted out the order, and placed it in front of Li Nanheng. Although this secretary Yu was a man, he had been in the Li Corporation for many years. He was thorough and thorough. His cousin Li Jintz had always praised this secretary when she was managing the company. Although Li Nanheng didn't communicate much with him, he had to admit that he was indeed a very good assistant. He glanced at Yu Zheng again and picked up the document to read. Seeing that CEO Li didn't want to talk much, Yu Zheng winked at the other secretary, and the two of them quietly left. The office returned to silence. Li Nanheng looked at the contents of the document and flipped to the next page. Before Mr. Feng passed away, he had promised to let Feng Ling leave 11 base and let her return to the peaceful and happy life that a normal girl should have. After Feng Ling returned to the Feng family, he had promised grandfather Feng to give Feng Ling some time to slowly grow up in the world outside the base. If Feng Ling didn't take the initiative to contact him, he would give her more time. Only when she had no worries and no one behind her would she wholeheartedly find a breakthrough and not be limited to her past experiences. It had been half a year. Feng Ling had been in England for half a year, and Li Nanheng had been forced back by grandfather Li to take over the family business for half a year. She was studying hard and flying high outside. He was also in Los Angeles, stripping away his identity as the person in charge of 11 base. He stayed in this huge Li corporation and looked at the boring financial figures and documents that needed his signature all day long. He dealt with those business elites who killed without spilling blood. Feng Ling had gone to Mr. Zan's side to study for a year. It had only been half a year. Li Nanheng knew that everything was going smoothly and safely with her by Jin Wan's side. He could completely grasp her learning progress and current situation. He was sure that she was fine. Occasionally, he could see a few photos sent by the informant. However, an hour ago, after receiving the informant's photo and understanding what had just happened, Xiaosu called to report. In the photo, the mixed-race man who went in and out of the mall and hospital with Feng Ling kept his gaze on Feng Ling's man. After all, he understood men. He could tell that it was a man's gaze when he saw prey he was interested in. There were also a few photos of Feng Ling and the mixed-race man sitting in the car. That person's posture was ambiguous and domineering. Feng Ling looked at him in the car and was very close. Xiaosu said on the phone, "This person's name is Ian. He's the vice president of the London International Bank and Mr. Zan's younger brother. I haven't seen him much before. Recently, he often appears by Feng Ling's side. He's 33 years old and is one of the representatives of a very capable financial businessman." Li Nanheng glanced at the photo of Ian and Feng Ling in the car on his phone. He pressed the document in his hand on the desk and pressed the internal phone. Yuzheng, arrange a cooperation channel with London's MN Group. Up. There's one good news and one bad news. Which one do you want to hear first? Feng Ling did not raise her head. She flipped through the documents in her hands. It doesn't matter which one I listen to first. Which one do you want to speak first? Jinwan chuckled, crossed her arms, leaned casually against the table, and looked down at her. I'm not sure which one is good news for you, and which one is bad news for you. Hearing that it was related to her, Feng Ling glanced at her. Why are you keeping me guessing? First of all, the Li Corporation in Los Angeles contacted our company's development department. They plan to cooperate with MN. This is good news. After all, the Li Corporation is a big piece of fat meat in Los Angeles, and their family foundation is strong. Not any small company can get close to them. If we can cooperate with such a company, it will be of great help to MN, Jinwan said. Hearing Jinwan's words, Feng Ling nodded. That's good news. The bad news is that Li Nanheng has completely taken over the management of the Li Corporation. The person in charge of this cooperation is CEO Li himself. The two of them will come to England, London, and our place in the next few days, Jinwan said as she lowered her head to look at Feng Ling. Sure enough, Feng Ling paused and then raised her eyes to meet her gaze. Jinwan raised her eyebrows at her. Her eyes were clearly saying that everything she said was true, and that she was not joking with her. When it came to company matters, Jinwan never joked. This business cooperation couldn't be missed, but since Jinwan came to talk to her, it was clear that she wanted to hear Feng Ling's thoughts. If Feng Ling didn't want to, Jinwan would rather lose this cooperation opportunity than make things difficult for Feng Ling. Feng Ling retracted her gaze, closed the document in her hand, and leaned back in her chair. She was silent for a few minutes. Jinwan didn't say much and just watched her expression. After a long time she asked, Feng Ling, what plans do you have? Aren't you going to send someone back to High City to deliver something? Let me send it, Feng Ling said. However, Jinwan shook her head gently. Mr. Zan said that your grandfather told you not to leave England and not to wander around alone. You must ensure that you are always under Mr. Zan's eyes. The Feng family only had Feng Ling left. Grandfather Feng was very concerned about her safety and didn't want to see anything happen to her. He also firmly believed that as long as Feng Ling learned by Mr. Zan's side, her personality would be suppressed and restrained. He definitely wouldn't allow her to leave alone. Feng Ling looked at Jinwan. I don't want to see him. Her relationship with Jinwan was so good that she didn't need to hide her thoughts. She didn't have any reason to be coquettish. She just spoke the truth. She didn't have any thoughts. She just didn't want to see him. Jinwan clicked her tongue. Do you know what happened when I sent that application to the Li Corporation? At that time, I was just a small studio, and the person in charge of the Li Corporation wasn't Li Nanheng. It was equivalent to my cooperation application not being accepted by them and being shelved. However, Li Nanheng specially dug out something from so long ago and even came to London personally. What do you think he came to London for? Does a company with a solid foundation like the Lee Corporation need a business cooperation contract from a new company like me? He clearly came to look for you. However, the reason for business cooperation is more open and above board. Jin Wan was becoming more and more clear-headed. She directly broke through the fog in front of Feng Ling's eyes. The problem between you and Li Nanheng isn't like that between me and Mo Jingshan. I was the one who was left behind by your Mr. Mo. There's no way back. I can only grit my teeth and endure it. But you're different. You can return to Li Nanheng's side. As long as you want, he will definitely open his arms and wait for you to go over. Chapter 1287. However, Feng Ling stood up and gently tossed the documents in her hands onto the table. She coldly said, I don't want to. With that, she turned to leave. Jin Wan also walked out. As she walked by her side, she said, If you really don't want to see her, then don't. I can also respect your decision regarding the cooperation. You can talk about the business cooperation as you want. Just don't bring me out. I'll be studying at Mr. Zan's house this week. If I don't have time, I might stay at his place. After all, he has a lot of rooms. It's convenient for me to have a bedroom. Seeing Feng Ling's determination, Jin Wan understood her thoughts and nodded. All right then. 2 days later, Li Nanheng arrived but found nothing. No matter what the occasion was, Feng Ling did not appear at all, nor did she come out with Jin Wan. He looked for opportunities to wait for several days, but did not see her. In the end, before he was about to sign the cooperation contract with MN Group, Li Nanheng stood in Jin Wan's office and expressionlessly tossed a stack of contracts on her desk. He asked coldly, Where is she? Jin Wan sat behind the desk and looked at him calmly. She bluntly said, She doesn't want to see you. She took a few days off from me and didn't come to the company. Li Nanheng coldly glanced at her. COG, you're so blunt now. Jin Wan chuckled lightly, but her smile did not reach her eyes. We can be considered old friends. I'm just saying what I want to say. Do I have to tactfully tell you that Feng Ling is not here? Oh, why is she not here? Isn't the reason because she doesn't want to see you? Why did I beat around the bush? Isn't it a waste of breath? He narrowed his eyes coldly and stared at her face. That's good. After all, she's still studying in London. If there's no problem, I won't disturb her progress. Since CEOG is so independent, and even wants to interfere with Feng Ling's matters, why don't you keep an eye on her private life, and let her work hard and study hard during her studies abroad? Don't get too close to those men who appear out of nowhere. Jin Wan nodded and said, You're right, Feng Ling, don't worry. Jin Wan had been maintaining a cold expression. When she heard these words, she almost collapsed. With some difficulty, she looked at the man in front of her, who was warning her seriously, but was clearly jealous of her. She continued to maintain a cold expression. I don't care about Feng Ling's private life, but based on the relationship between sisters and friends, I feel that as long as it doesn't affect her learning progress, it's not a bad choice to let her interact with others occasionally and forget the people and things in the past as soon as possible. Li Nanheng said solemnly, Do you think she is you? What's the difference between her and me now? She knows how to endure better than me, but once this kind of person who is used to enduring explodes, no one can bear the consequences. I believe she should have already exploded. Otherwise, you wouldn't be so helpless against her now. Jin Wan was no longer pretending to be cold, but really indifferent. A layer of frost appeared between Li Nanheng's cold brows, but he did not explain anything. He only said, Since she is with you now, you should keep an eye on her. You know what I mean. Don't mess around and harm others and yourself. Her mind can't hold more things. If you dare to randomly send people to her, in the end, she will be filled with self-blame and guilt. Or if she can't leave some unnecessary circles, she will become a psychological burden. Jin Wan, when my temper is bad, I won't give Mo Jingshan face. Originally, Jin Wan had always been joking. How could she really mess around? However, Li Nanheng's last sentence still caused Jin Wan's expression to freeze. Whether you give Mo Jingshan face or not, What does it have to do with me? Jin Wan was expressionless. Am I very familiar with him? Li Nanheng only sneered. He glanced at the contract in front of her, picked up the pen and signed it. He then threw the pen down and turned to leave without looking back. Xiaoba saw Li Nanheng's back and softly exclaimed. She then pushed the door open and walked in. Oh my god, so cool. I've never seen this legendary Mr. Li before. I didn't expect him to be so handsome. He is Feng Ling's. Jin Wan's expression was cold because Li Nanheng had mentioned Mo Jingxian. The moment Xiaoba entered, she felt that the atmosphere was not right, and quickly shut her mouth. Seeing that the business cooperation contract had been signed, she walked forward to pick it up and left. She did not dare to speak anymore. Feng Ling did not want to see him. Seeing that she was still studying, Li Nanheng did not look for her. Even though he knew that she was at Mr. Zan's place, and could use the fact that he had some relationship with Mr. Zan to capture her, he still gave her time to study quietly, and did not disturb her. However, before Li Nanheng left London, he warned Mr. Zan to tell his brother to stay away from Feng Ling, and not to touch women he shouldn't touch. Otherwise, it was hard to say if he would personally visit London again. At that time, it would not be as simple as a warning. In the next few months, although Mr. Ian still maintained a considerable interest in Feng Ling was like a block of wood. She did not even agree to treat him to a meal. When she saw him, she would always take a detour. Later on, she even became smarter. Every time she went to Mr. Zan's house, she would ask someone to drive with her, thus avoiding the opportunity for him to send her home. In short, she did not give him any chance at all. Most importantly, because of Li Nanheng, Mr. Zan maintained some doubts about Feng Ling's past. Previously, he had only thought that she was a little girl who had finally returned to the Feng family after suffering outside for a few years. He did not expect that her relationship with Li Nanheng was not simple. A smart person like Mr. Zan had always known how to act appropriately, so he did not take the initiative to matchmake them. Although Li Nanheng did not see Feng Ling, the deterrent effect of coming to London was enough to achieve his goal. Los Angeles, America. Li Corporation. Li Nanheng leaned against the leather chair behind the desk. He played with the pen on the table with one hand, and closed his eyes to listen to Xiao Su's report. On August 20th, Feng Ling and Jin Wan went to Paris to participate in Bustling's debut show. They stayed in France for a week and met several French partners. On September 3rd, Feng Ling met the general manager of London's GK Corporation alone, and discussed a cooperation worth 400 million yuan. On September 8th, Feng Ling. Then, when he mentioned the charity banquet sponsored by the London International Bank, Mr. Ian personally invited Feng Ling to attend as his female companion. Xiao Su looked at the report below, and paused for a moment. He raised his eyes to look at Li Nanheng, who was calm and composed, as though he was sure that Feng Ling would not attend. On September 15th, Feng Ling attended the charity banquet as Mr. Ian's female companion. The London business media recognized her as Mr. Ian's girlfriend. Li Nanheng abruptly opened his eyes. Li Erha miscalculated. Now that little Feng Ling has studied in England for a year, he can officially go snatch a wife. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.